Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 226, Gane versus Spivak, also known as UFC Paris. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
Bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va?
Très bien. Comment vas-tu? Oui, oui.
Oui.
See?
Oui.
No, that's Spanish. I don't know. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I mean, you and I, obviously, we talked less. Well, in this case, it was more than 24 hours ago just because we finished the Singapore card that was super early in the day. But, you know, we talked yesterday. It's the UFC's second stop on a little world tour. Last week, of course, they were in Singapore, Paris this week, Sydney, Australia next week. Then there are back-to-back cards in Las Vegas, though one of them is at T-Mobile Arena, one of those rare fight nights that gets the arena treatment, the Grasso versus Shevchenko card, then Fizzy versus Gamrot, and then we get the last weekend in September off. So, you know, kind of fun when the UFC goes on the road. The crowds outside the United States all tend to be super, super amped, and Paris, France had its first ever UFC card barely over a year ago, has been super jazzed. So I can't help but be excited when they're excited. It makes what would otherwise be a kind of a fight night card exciting for me because, hell, not all these fighters are great, but a hell of a lot of them are French.
Yeah, I'll say this: the top two fights are great. I mean, that's for a fight night. That's pretty good. I mean. Rose Namajunas and Manon Fiorot, like that could headline a fight night.
It could headline a fight night, and it's a potential title eliminator depending on how other things shake out. You could say the same for the main event depending on how things shake out. So yeah, I'm with you.
The rest of the card is how they would say in France, puta kensiga, which translates to who the fuck are these guys?
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to call it La Poubelle, which would be trash, but I can't even call it Leftovers Night because on the good side, it's a card in France, and of the 12 fights, 9 of them have a French fighter in the red corner. That's great. And of the other 3, 2 of them at least have a European, and the last one has Ange, who at least is from Congo and is a native French speaker. So if he wins, he's going to be able to say some shit in French and get the crowd going. The downside is that to achieve this, the UFC had to sign a bunch of people that in some cases may not be ready for prime time, or had to re-sign people who proved that they were not ready for prime time, like Rhys McKee. So, I mean, the UFC giveth and the UFC taketh away, but they at least did get the whole geographic relevance thing going this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of Europeans on this card. That's for sure. There's a lot of who the hell is this guy? A lot of Cage Warrior study, a lot of Brave FC study. I love that you speak more French than I do, and I'm married to the Canadian. Like that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about that, and she said, well, you know, don't all Canadians speak French? I'm like, well, I know all Canadians at least can read some French because all the government signs have to be in both languages, so they know that that's where I get my driver's license, and that's the bathroom. And
yeah, my wife could read stop. Yeah, she took
insert joke about women drivers here.
Yeah, she took like 12 years of French in high school, and if you don't speak it, you lose it. So yeah, she's from the where they say A and all that. She's from that part. You know, where every guy has a mullet, and yeah, they like covered bridges, and yeah. I've said to her many times, like, you'd be so much hotter if you had a French accent. But
how's that go over with her?
No, she's Canadian though, so she does. Like, she just takes it.
At least you don't tell her she'd be hotter if she had a mullet.
That's her response to me.
Oh, don't do it, man. Outside of the top 2 fights, what fight are you most excited for? Or if you can't name a fight, which prospect, because it's really all prospects outside of the top 3 fights, are you most excited for?
Which fight would I most be excited for? I mean, Basharat Rodrigues, the first fight of the night. I think it's the first fight of the night. Like
they may have bumped Zarah Fairn dos Santos and Jacqueline Cavalcanti below it, but
okay,
it's one of the first.
When I looked earlier this week, it was like the first fight. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's. I'm trying to see. Moises and Saint Denis. I think that's a good one.
Yeah,
Thiago. That's probably the best fight.
Yeah, I'm with you. And what do you know? It's actually fourth from the top. Beneath the three that make the most sense to have. Above it. The top two fights, and then Volkan Oezdemir, who obviously is, still a top 10, top 15 type guy. Shall we dig right into these prelims? The undercard of UFC Paris is still in a little bit of churn right now, but at least as of when we're looking at it on Sunday night, it looks like the first fight up is a women's bantamweight matchup between Zarah Fairn dos Santos and Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Dos Santos, the 36-year-old French woman, is 6-5 overall. She is 0-3 in the UFC. She debuted a little under 4 years ago, getting triangled by Megan Anderson. Since then, she has 2 more losses to Felicia Spencer, and then most recently, a decision loss to Joselyne Nunes, which took place this January at UFC 283. So desperately in need of a win here. There's every possibility she would have been cut before this if the UFC didn't know it was going back to France this year. But she's going to try to get into the win column one more time against Cavalcanti, who steps in for Hayley Cowan on about 10 days' notice. Cavalcanti, 25-year-old from Portugal, is 5-1 overall. This will be her debut, I mentioned. She is the outgoing bantamweight champ of LFA, as well as Strikers Cage Championship in Spain. She fought most recently in April at LFA 157, where she won the vacant LFA bantamweight title over Melissa Croden. Odds here, considering that Cavalcanti is the short notice opponent and the less seasoned fighter stepping in with a relatively thin resume, it's slightly shocking to me that she is an overwhelming favorite here. She is minus 350. Zarah Fairn dos Santos plus 280. Having said that, I understand why this line is what it is. Zarah Fairn dos Santos, I said last week ahead of UFC Singapore that Na Liang might be the worst fighter in the UFC, just pound for pound, regardless of gender. That was before I remembered that Zarah Fairn dos Santos is in the UFC. She hasn't shown much. It's not just that she's lost, it's whom she's lost to and how. Losing to Megan Anderson in 2019 is not that bad. Getting mounted triangled by Megan Anderson is bad. I know what she wants to do, and she just lacks the athleticism or technique to make it happen. She definitely presents as a striker. She is big for the division. She's going to be huge for this division. Also worth mentioning that Zarah Fairn dos Santos is 0-3 in the UFC, and all those fights have taken place at featherweight. And in fact, she's not fought a bantamweight period since September 7th, 2017. So it's going to be almost exactly 6 years since the last time she had to make 136 pounds. I don't know about you, but I know that between age 30 and age 36, I did not get skinnier. So there's a question over whether she even makes weight, and if she does make weight, how she looks physically. If she's compromised in any way by the weight cut, that's only going to make things easier for Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti, for someone who's just 26 years old and only has 6 professional fights, she has reasonably quality experience. I went back and watched her appearance on PFL Challenger Series last March. I kind of glossed over it at the time because the A side of the fight was definitely Martina Jandrova, and I was not impressed by what I saw. Cavalcanti's a Muay Thai striker, orthodox. She threw good volume, but she threw good volume by making it look like a sparring match. It was a bunch of half speed low kicks and half speed jabs, just kind of stay busy volume. Not even Caitlin Chukagian volume, where she's like snapping the jab out into space hard with a key eye, trying to impress the judges. It really did just look like a sparring match. She did throw a nice push kick, and I mean literally a push kick. It's not like the classic Muay Thai like snap kick to the gut that hurts and can zing your liver, but just literally pushed Jandrova off balance a couple times with her foot. She was good to grab the collar tie quickly when Jandrova came in and tried to clinch, and would, throw some hockey uppercuts from there. But watching her fights after that, I realized that part of the problem was that took place at lightweight. And while neither she nor Jandrova is a lightweight, Jandrova is a featherweight. So Cavalcanti was at a bit of a bulk disadvantage there, even if they were about the same height and length. Seeing her fighting at 135 was much more impressive. All of a sudden, there's more snap on her strikes. She was more aggressive, like in terms of not just throwing volume, but coming forward, throwing that volume, feinting, trying to get reactions out of her opponent that she could take advantage of. I came out of this actually a little higher on her than I expected to be. I thought of the line as being primarily due to Zarah Santos just not being good, but I actually am. I am a little excited about Jacqueline Cavalcanti in the UFC. She is a big-bodied 135-pounder who's not just tall and skinny or tall and skinny fat, but like has some muscle on her frame, has some decent athleticism. Her ground game is relatively untested. So, I mean, there's always the question of what'll happen there, but I don't think Zarah Santos is going to be the one to try to test it. Here, I expect Cavalcanti to just bust up Dos Santos pretty badly in a kickboxing match. And if Zarah Santos is compromised at all, again, by just trying to make 135 pounds when her body doesn't want to, and her gas tank or her chin are affected by that, I can see Cavalcanti getting the finish. She's not a super high power striker, but she does stay busy and she doesn't fade in 3 or even 5 round fights. So I'm actually calling that here. Give me Jacqueline Cavalcanti to get a TKO stoppage. I'm going to say late in the second round after some pretty one-way traffic.
So I want to put this on the record because I think you're a little unfair to Zarah Fairn. I mean, if you look at who she's faced, I mean, she faced 2 former title challengers in Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer, and then she went against Josie Nunes, and like, she only was a foot taller than her. Like, it's like it's a little unfair. Like, you know what I mean? She only was 1 foot taller than the woman. Like, cut us some slack. Yeah, I've said this before, but like, she looks like she fights at 205. She's huge, and I know it's, the UFC with everything, with Menendez leaving, them get, looks like they get rid of featherweight. She has to drop down to bantamweight. Like, she's going to be the biggest bantamweight ever if she, like you said, if she even makes it. Besides being thick, she's tall, she's long, she's lengthy. She does do some things like on the feet pretty well. Like, she got some high output. She works behind a jab. She was actually doing okay against. I actually think she was winning the stand up against Felicia Spencer. Obviously, the way she's built, she has some plus power. Defensively, she has a lot of issues. She pulls her head straight back to avoid shots. She hates being pressured. She backs straight up to the cage. She keeps her chin high in the air, and then her ground game is just. If I said it was non-existent, that would be better, because her ground game is terrible. No takedown defense at all. No get-up game. No submission defense. Spencer
mounted by Megan Anderson in seconds.
Mounted by Megan Anderson, yeah. So, and her cardio was bad, and that was when she was at 145 and she gassed out. Like, I expected it to be even worse down at 135. Jacqueline Cavalcanti, it's never a good sign, when the PFL doesn't want somebody, and then the Vegas bettors put you at like a negative. What'd you say? Negative 325 favorite.
Minus 350.
Oh my! See, I was even minus 350. She's oh my lord, she might be a 4-1 favorite by the time the fight actually goes down. Mm-hmm. And the PFL didn't want her. She's really young. She's 26. So, I mean, she's not super young, but that's a good age. I like some of the things she does on her feet. She can fight out of both stances. She's a pocket boxer. She's got some fast hands. She's accurate. I like her straight right. I like that she attacks with combos. I like that she parries punches, which is rare at MMA, something that, I mean, besides actually moving your head, it's or moving your whole body out of the way. I like parrying punches. She got some good power. I like her calf kicks, though she does throw some naked leg kicks, and she doesn't check leg kicks. I haven't seen too much of her on the ground, but I have seen some pretty solid takedown defense. But she doesn't have a single sub on her record. But I watched her last fight, and she was able to go 25 minutes and go hard, and she really pieced up her opponent. If this fight stays on the feet, Fairn actually has a shot. I mean, she's going to be way bigger. She's, super long. But I'm with you. I'm going to take the PFL reject, and I'm going to go with Cavalcanti. I mean, I love her age. She's at the age where she can continue to make improvements. I think she finds a way to get inside to land her shots. She could get a late stoppage, but I think it's going to go to decision. Give me Cavalcanti by decision.
All right. There you go. 2 picks for Jacqueline Cavalcanti to pick up a win in her UFC debut and become instantly the greatest female mixed martial artist in the history of Portugal.
There you go.
And she's probably the third greatest ever after Pedro Carvalho and Andre Fialho.
Oh yeah. Good thing you didn't have me guess that one, the betting line, because I would have been so far off on that one. I was gonna give her a favorite, but I would have guessed negative 150. Jeez.
Next up at UFC Fight Night 226 is a men's bantamweight matchup between Farid Basharat and Kleydson Rodrigues. Basharat, the 26-year-old Afghanistan-born Englishman, is a perfect 10-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of Season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his debut at UFC 285 back in March, where he took a unanimous decision over Damon Blackshear. He'll look to keep his record spotless against Rodrigues. The 27-year-old Brazilian is 8-2 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 5th season of the Contender Series. He lost a split decision to CJ Vergara in his promotional debut last May, came back this February at UFC 284 and knocked out Shannon Ross in just under a minute. A fantastic win that was marred only by him having missed the flyweight limit by 2 pounds. He decided at that point, more than 2 pounds. He weighed in at 129. But at any rate, decided that his best future lay at 135. We always love to see a fighter making that decision on their own before it's forced upon them. But he does have a pretty stiff challenge in his bantamweight debut. He is a big underdog here. Rodrigues is out there around plus 240. Basharat in there at minus 300. Keith, is Farid Basharat the real deal? Win or lose against Rodrigues, is he a future contender at 135? And tell me how you think this fight goes.
Well, that's such a tough question, because 135 is, in my opinion, probably the best division in MMA. If not, it's in the discussion. Between 135 and 170, pick a weight class, and I'll agree with you depending on the day. So but if he becomes a top 15 guy, that's very successful. You know what I mean? I think he's one of the best prospects in MMA. So he's a very good striker. He's very seasoned for his age. He's relaxed. He's calculated. He flows between his stances extremely well. Great footwork, high output, technically sound. He uses feints to set up his shots well. Accurate. I like that he doubles up the jab, which is something I'd like to see. Actually, something that Gane does in the main event. Blast the body. I love his calf kicks. He throws a lot of them, especially when he's in the southpaw stance on the watch. He's really good there. Biggest issue offensively is that he's not a true one-punch fight-ending power. Maybe as he gets older, he'll come into that. And I mean, obviously 135, the lower you go in the weight, the less that is, happens. It's also his technique. He doesn't really sit on his punches. He conserves some of his energy. He does have some defensive holes. He stands a little too tall. Is the biggest thing. But I just talked about, I was just glowing about his striking, but he's a very good wrestler. Strong wrestling. He gets inside. He looks for snatch singles, strong top game, mean ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He's got 5 subs on his record. I'm impressed by his cardio. That I've seen him go hard, really hard for 15 minutes. Move over to Kleydson Rodrigues. He's a massive guy, even at bantamweight. Like, he's not going to be undersized. And I'm a little concerned. Not I don't expect him to miss weight or anything like that, but we've seen guys miss weight and go up and then miss weight again. So it's like, it's being how big he is, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Sure.
He's very athletic. He's got that capoeira background. He's a bit of a wild man. He tries flying knees. He tries spinning attacks. He's got a lot of variety in striking. He attacks with everything. He attacks with all 8 points of his body. He likes to sit back and then suddenly explode at his opponent. He uses feints really well, set up his shots. He throws a lot of hard strikes. The one issue, because of his sit back style, his volume can be a little bit low, and he also can load up a lot, which I don't like. I like that he targets the body. He's got a good kicking game, a lot of front kicks, a lot of teep kicks, hard kicks to the body. He looks for hard elbows in close, kind of like a John Jones style where he punches with his elbows. He avoids strikes by rolling, which I've gone down like the spectrum of strikes. Strikes about defense. I think that's the worst one, but strong clinch game. He will go for a takedown, just drive right through. Makes the mistake of jumping on a guillotine to defend takedowns that I don't like. He only has 2 subs on his record, and he needs to improve his ground game. I mean, he got mounted by CJ Vergara twice, and he's also gassed out a little bit. But I think that'll change up at 135. So, is whom I'm picking? I'm picking Basharat, but I do feel like this could be a little bit trap. Like, I don't think he should be. Would you say that how big a favorite?
3-1. He's minus 300.
Yeah, like I was thinking more like negative 185, negative 190 because of just the size of Rodrigues, and his. I think the move up for Rodrigues in the long run is going to be a good thing. Obviously, he's missing weight, but just one of these guys where, I wonder how much was taken out of him cutting that weight. So I think he's going to be a guy that's improved moving up. But I still think Basharat, he's a more technically sound striker. He's definitely the better wrestler. I'm assuming, what I've seen them fight, he's had the deeper gas tank. So I think Basharat beats him everywhere. I'm tempted to pick like a late round submission, but I expect the decision with Basharat spending a lot of time on top of the ground. So give me Basharat by decision.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. I especially just found myself nodding along a lot at your assessment of Basharat's striking game, where if you had to point out a flaw, because I mean, he really is just smooth and poised and calm and pretty defensively sound for a young and relatively inexperienced fighter. But you pointed out that there's not a ton of one-shot power there. And part of that is that he is just 26 and he'll probably hit harder when he's 30. And part of it is that he doesn't always sit down on his punches. And that's not a terrible thing in and of itself. I mean, there are boxers who had great careers where they wouldn't really sit down on their punches until it was time to try to get the finish. They could always turn, like, Zab Judah, Floyd Mayweather, where they just pit, and just, frustrate their opponent until they could tell that he was getting tired or hurt, and then they turn up the jets. And then there were guys like, Paulie Malignaggi, who never sat down on their punches, and, because of that, they almost never knocked anyone out. Basharat is a guy that...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but not everybody can be the boxer that like a Bo Nickel is. Just starchy guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's too much to ask of someone like Farid Basharat, who's like 10-0.
Sorry, I forgot to put Bo Nickel in my notes. So as you were talking, I go, oh my god, I don't have Bo Nickel in my notes, and I had to find that first opportunity to throw it in there. So there you go.
Especially on a card with no middleweight fights on it, yeah, you can't risk missing. Basharat's ground game, it's a bit like his striking game. It's smooth, it's technically sound, it's poised. I agree all around. I think this is a good move for Rodrigues, but this is probably not the best test case for, is Kleydson Rodrigues going to have a good run at the UFC at bantamweight, because he's running into one of the hottest prospects in the UFC. On one level, you mentioned that he's got a capoeira influence style where but also is, a Muay Thai guy where he has just dangerous power in all 8 points and comes from odd angles. I would say it's all 9 points because he basically knocked Shannon Ross out by hitting him in the face with his ass. And presumably his ass will be bigger at 135 than at 129. So, I mean, this might be like
Yokozuna Rikishi move.
Well, I think Jay Petrie on the Show Dog play-by-play called it a horizontal version of the Mark Hunt atomic butt drop.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That's another one. Yeah, the Mark Hunt. Yeah.
So giving Kleydson and Rodrigues 6 more pounds of ass might be like sending Francis Ngannou bigger knuckles. This might really turn things around. But no, I'm with you. Like, Rodrigues is a surprise. Well, it's not that surprising that he hits hard. I mean, he's built like a freaking tank, but he has the ability to land something on Basharat that hits hard and comes from an unexpected angle. And maybe we see how Basharat reacts to that. But I have no reason right now to believe that Basharat's chin is suspect. He's taken clean shots from a few people and he's basically shrugged them off. So it's hoping that something like that could happen if you're Rodrigues, and the chances of that happening probably go down as the fight goes along because Basharat's cardio is super solid and Rodrigues is questionable, and Basharat is the kind of guy who's going to figure out Rodrigues more and more as the fight goes along. So I think we might get a first round where Basharat looks a little hesitant, or things actually get a little dicey because Rodrigues tags him a few times, but Basharat wins going away. And by the end, he's either won all 3 rounds or he's won rounds 2 and round 3 in increasingly dominant fashion. So give me Basharat by decision here. Next up at UFC Paris, and the third of 4 bantamweight fights to open this card, is a women's 135-pound matchup between the debuting Nora Cornolle and Joselyne Edwards. Cornolle, the 33-year-old French woman, is 6-1 overall. This will be her debut. She fought most recently in UAE Warriors, where she comes in off of a pair of back-to-back first-round TKO wins. She'll look to extend that streak into her UFC run at the expense of Edwards. The 27-year-old Panamanian is 13-4 overall. She is 4-2 in the UFC. She's on a 3-fight win streak, those being decision wins over Ramona Pascual, Ji-Yeon Kim, and Lucy Pudilova. The most recent of those, the Pudilova win, was at the UFC on ESPN Holloway versus Allen card back in April. So she'll be looking for her 4th straight win. Cornolle will be looking for her 7th straight win. She lost her debut to Jacqueline Cavalcanti, incidentally, and is undefeated since. Edwards is the slight favorite to get it done. She is out there around -130, Cornolle +110 on the comeback. I actually like this matchup. Cornolle is, I mean, she's a kickboxer. She has a certain amount of kickboxing experience outside of her MMA run. Honestly, in her MMA fights that I saw, she was using solid, fundamental bread and butter kickboxing to kind of overwhelm women who couldn't deal with her. Like, the women she beat seemed to be undersized, undertrained, and or underskilled. I mean, she throws decent leg kicks and throws them pretty hard, and nobody could deal with them. She throws pretty straight punches, and they couldn't deal with that. She appears pretty physically strong for the division, doesn't strike me as a real standout athlete. She's someone who, in the depleted and aging UFC women's bantamweight division, could stick around, maybe, win a couple fights here and there, maybe even pick up an award or 2. And she's getting a debut opponent in Edwards that's going to give her a chance to shine, because Edwards is willing to resort to offensive wrestling, but she would much rather strike, and her real Achilles heel is her defensive wrestling, and I don't think Cornolle's going to test that either. My problem is that Edwards is bigger, younger, more athletic. She might not be as buttoned up and defensively sound on the feet, but I think she's going to be faster and hit harder. I see Edwards taking this one. At the very least, she's going to know how to check a leg kick, and she's probably going to want to throw back some of her own. I think her leg kicks are probably the best part of her game at this point, unless you count, surprise takedowns on badly overmatched opponents. On the one hand, Edwards, she's 4-2 in the UFC, but she really has just fought the bottom of the barrel that the UFC had to offer her. Her wins in the UFC over Wu Yanan, Ramona Pasquale, Ji Yeon Kim, and Lucy Pudilova. Like, Pudilova to me is the only one that really even has a spark of life to her. Yeah, give me Edwards in a decision over Cornolle here, but I'm not terribly confident in it. Cornolle is so unproven, and she's fought such a low level of competition that she may have been fighting down to her competition, and she may surprise us here, but give me Edwards for now.
I like you had to say that you're not confident in Joselyne Edwards pick.
I got Joselyne Edwards all day, every day, twice on Sunday, like said nobody ever.
Yeah, if you're one of these like MMA, the betting sites are like, oh, this is a can't miss, take it to the bank. Bet. I would just quit the show right now. Like, all right, I'm over my head. This guy's too good for me. If he's confident in Joselyne Edwards.
No, this isn't a take it to the bank fight. This is like go to the bank or go do some errand while the fight goes on.
Yeah. I mean, with it seems like the theme for this card is, massive fighters for their weight. I mean, Joselyne Edwards fits that bill too. Yeah, long, lengthy kickboxer, high volume, very quick hands. They tend to come from her hips. So I've said this before because I'm still like working my way through the hands coming from the hips thing because I've seen it work for so many fighters well because it's hard to see it coming. It's you're kind of focusing more upper body than it coming up from down low. Kind of like how it's a lot harder to see a kick coming, but it's like a double-edged sword because the defensive side of it, you got to have really good head movement for that. So I don't know why I went off on a little side rant, but so she can load up a little bit too much on her structure. I don't like. Though look at her size. She got some sting to her shots, hard kicks, mean kicks to the body. She has those John Jones oblique kicks going, which I'll go to side note again. I think that I'm in that camp where I think they should be illegal because they do more. They're more about injuring your opponent than like beating your opponent. If that makes sense. Like it's not gonna knock him out by kicking him there. It has more long-term effects. Anyway, back to this. She avoids strikes. She has like tall women's defense. She avoids strikes by pulling her head straight back, which I don't like. She was hurt to the body by Ramon Pascal. I think her best fight position is probably the plum clinch. She's pretty good inside there. She gets knees and elbows inside there. She will occasionally wrestle. She'll go for a takedown, but she's definitely not a wrestler. She's got terrible takedown defense. She struggles to get back up off the bottom. She makes some mistakes to look for subs instead of going. I mean, she's got 3 subs, so I get why she does it. But generally speaking, she goes for subs and she just loses rounds. And how do I say her name? Cornolle. That's it. Cornolle was if she was if we were fighting in Italy. That's it.
Yeah. Leave the gun, take the Cornolle.
Yeah. She's hard to evaluate because, as you said, she's faced so many like low-level fighters. So, yeah, and there's not too much film of her. And besides that, she has a lot of quick finishes. So, she's a Muay Thai striker. She's got some good power. Defensively, she keeps her chin high in the air. What I've seen of her, she's not much of a wrestler at all. She's a weak defensive wrestler. I saw one fight where she was on top, pretty mean ground and pound, but I also saw one fight where she got headlocked and thrown, which instantly puts her in the scrub category for me. But she does have a submission win. So as far as the prediction goes, like as you can tell, I didn't do too much study in Cornolle based on there's not a lot out there. So I have no clue, how to look at Cornolle. So I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go with Edwards just from the size and length advantage. And if you're gonna stand and bang with Edwards, you obviously have an automatic defense you got to get by the length or reach. So to me, I mean, don't bet this. Don't be like saying, oh, Ben and Keith both picked Edwards, so I'm betting my house on her. Like, don't do that because I'm picking her, but I'm not putting a single dollar on her, so don't do it. Edwards by decision.
Next up on the UFC Fight Night 226 undercard is a men's bantamweight matchup between Taylor Lapilus and Muin Gafurov. Lapilus, the 31-year-old Frenchman, is 18-3 overall. He is 3-1 in a UFC run that went from about 2014 to 2016 and saw him kind of mystifyingly released despite being 3-1 in the promotion and despite coming off a win in the last fight on his contract. The UFC let him go. He responded by going 7-1 since then, beating some good fighters, beating Wilson Hayes, Josh Hill, one of the better fighters out of tough 16 or whatever that was, beating Nate Maness, who's in the UFC right now. But only now, when the UFC returns to France once again, does he finally get the call back. He will be fighting for the first time since last April. He'd been fighting primarily in Aries FC in Europe. He gets the call back, and he gets the call to face Gafurov. 27-year-old from Tajikistan is 18-5 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 5th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the Contender Series about 2 years ago, dropped a close decision to Chad Henniger, didn't get signed, so he went back and won 2 fights in LFA, got the call back in June, where he debuted on the UFC on ESPN Cara France versus Albazi card and came up short against John Castaneda, much to the disappointment of the stadium full of Tajik fans that were probably rooting for him. Anyway, he'll look to make all those fans happy, finally get his first octagon win. He's not favored to do so. Lapilus is around minus 190 right now, Gafurov plus 160. Keith, I'm going to turn this one over to you, but Taylor Lapilus is, by all appearances, a pretty good fighter. He was demonstrably UFC material, and he was about 25 years old when they let him go. Here he gets a second chance. Does he get it done, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I was looking real quick to see what was the story behind that. Was there like a USADA thing, or no? Just seems like they moved. I don't know. Really weird.
And he's an MMA Factory guy, and at the time, the UFC was on pretty good terms with that camp. So, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there's some kind of story back there. This is one of those fights I think is one of the best on the card. I actually like both guys. Besides getting cut from the UFC, Lapilus, he's looked really good, and he's faced, like you mentioned, he's faced good competition. Probably the best competition you can find outside the UFC. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the, next big prospect. I mean, just like this group of guys, these level of guys are quality guys that he's faced. He's a southpaw, very controlled striker, calculated, sets up his shots really well with jabs, really quick jab, nice leg kicks. Though he does throw some naked leg kicks. He does also make the mistake of back up at the center line. He's a guy that he lacks head movement. That's what's really surprising for a guy that's as good of a striker as he is, and especially a guy who does some boxing too. Good dirty boxing though. Like he'll get in there, grab the back of the head, can sneak in a takedown. A weak defensive wrestler, but he's got 6 submission wins on his record, which I like. Gafurov, he's a pressure fighter. That's all his whole thing. He fights at an insane pace, throws nonstop punches, really sits on his punches, wings overhand rights. Winging left hook. He throws a lot of kicks, though he doesn't set him up. He loves spinning back, back kicks and stuff like that, spinning back elbows and all kinds of fun stuff like that. He throws a lot, which is surprising because he's got the cardio to go all 15 minutes. He can wrestle. He's good at following his strikes right into his entries. He's a 2-time world champion in combat sambo. He's got 7 submission wins. Really whips his ground and pound a la Fedor Emelianenko style. This is the fight I've actually really flip-flopped on, because you watch film study and everything says Lapilus is way more polished. He's beat the better names. He's definitely more technically sound. He's a good fighter. Like I think he's going to do good in the UFC. But to me, Gafurov's got all this other stuff going. He's got this pressure that is going to be so hard to fight and train. If he fights at that pressure, it's Merab with less wrestling. Like, not, you know, he doesn't have as good of wrestling, but I mean, that just, you know, that can make it work. And honestly, I'm going to go the upset. I'm leaning that way. I'm going to say the pressure gets Gafurov to land more shots, more volume. I'm going to say he wins by split decision.
I could see that real easy. This, for me, was also one of the two hardest fights on the card to pick. You know, we'll get to the other one when we get to it. But I could absolutely see that, you know, this fight going Gafurov's way because of the pressure, because of just the furious pace that he seems pretty well able to keep up, you know, at least for 3 rounds. I'm going to go with Lapilus here as probably the more polished fighter, the one who's probably a little more defensively sound. And as I'm thinking that Lapilus is able to at least keep things even into a stalemate if and when this goes to the ground, that he is able to defend a decent amount of the takedowns, or if things go to the ground, is able to hold his own there, is maybe able to sweep, escape, threaten with submissions. If Gafurov starts looking like Merab when it hits the ground, then I will know that this pick was dead wrong. But then probably so were a lot of people, since Lapilus is almost a 2-1 favorite.
Yeah.
But
I just want to make sure. I'm not saying he's Merab. I'm not saying he's wrestling.
No. You specifically said without the wrestling, just with like the furious pace and pressure.
Because sometimes our listeners don't listen to everything we're saying.
But I'm going with Lapilus here to pick up the decision. But this should be an easy candidate for fight of the night. Next up, the welterweights take the cage as Ange Loosa fights Rhys McKee. Loosa, the 30-year-old Congolese-born, I believe, Switzerland-based welterweight at this point, is 9-3 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost to Jack Della Maddalena on the show. Not too much shame there. Was signed to the UFC anyway last April. In fact, he debuted on short notice, taking on Munir Lazzez like 2 weeks after his last fight, you know, in Florida. Dropped a unanimous decision to Lazzez, came back last August and won a unanimous decision over AJ Fletcher. So he's looking to make it 2 in a row against McKee, who is still looking for his first UFC win. 27-year-old Irishman is 13-4-1 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC. He was signed in 2020, cut that same year after back-to-back losses to Khamzat Chimaev and Alex Morono. Since then, he's gone back to his roots, won 3 straight in Cage Warriors, on his way to picking up, I believe, the Cage Warriors welterweight title. But yeah, got a stoppage over Judo Jim Wallhead at Cage Warriors 153 in April. That was good enough to get him signed back by the UFC, where he is he'll look to make it right on his 3rd try. He is not favored to do so. Loosa minus 185, McKee plus 150 on the comeback. Ange Loosa, it's hard for me not to just stray into stereotypes here, because he is athletic and explosive. He is an absolute powerhouse, and it's not that he's unskilled. It is that his power and explosion make things go for him. Like, you know, he is a striker by preference, but tends to throw tons of just really hard shots, throws most of his stuff at 100% or more. He's been a surprisingly solid offensive wrestler, but mostly because of the speed of his entries and just the raw power to finish his to finish takedowns that another fighter might not be able to. I think that works well for him against someone in Rhys McKee, who McKee is actually quite skilled. Like, in a vacuum, like if you just saw the guy working out, I think you'd think his striking technique was quite clean, but lacks athleticism, lacks power, poor defensive wrestler. Getting bodied by Khamzat Chimaev is no shame, but I mean, he made Alex Morono look like a fantastic wrestler. And obviously, I love Alex. He is, you know, the closest fighter to me in both geographically and in terms of like just, you know, friendship. But if you make Alex Morono looked like Marab. You probably aren't long for the UFC. He wasn't long for the UFC. Here he's coming back, and I think he's tailor-made for Loosa to destroy. Loosa has his flaws, but Loosa could either do to McKee what Khamzat did and just blow him up with huge punches, or he could do what Morono did and take him down and just make him miserable down there. It was interesting to see Loosa's fight against AJ Fletcher. Because Fletcher it's almost a mirror match. Fletcher, compact, but super heavily muscled guy for the division, a good wrestler who's a power wrestler and mostly throws haymakers on the feet. It was practically like a film and a negative. But Loosa ended up taking over the fight late because Fletcher gassed out. And part of that is that it was in Salt Lake City, which, it's not, like I say every time, it's not Tibet, but it is at, 4,500 feet or so. And Loosa's gas tank isn't the greatest either, but it was better than Fletcher's. And so, he got a 10-8 round in the last round just by grounding Fletcher and just beating the shit out of him. I think he's probably going to be able to do that to McKee from the first round if he wants to. And that's actually my pick here. Loosa will probably exchange on the feet for a minute because you can tell that what he really wants more than anything is just a walk-off one-punch knockout. But if McKee proves elusive, if he's, using his footwork decently to kind of like stay at range, because McKee will have the reach advantage, then I think Loosa just crashes the pocket, grabs him by the waist, throws him down, and just pounds him out on the ground. So give me Loosa by first round TKO here. And it's interesting to me that this line is tighter than the one in the Lapilus versus Gafurov fight that we just talked about, because that was one of the hardest fights on the card for me to pick.
Yeah.
And this one is one of the easiest.
What was the line you said?
Loosa's minus 185, McKee plus 150 or so. And Lapilus was closer to minus 200, minus 190, minus 200. They're almost the same, but Loosa's definitely the closer line, and I don't think it's a closer fight.
Yeah, good thing we didn't play that game that I forgot which listener wanted you have me guess on the lines.
Yeah, Chase Thomas, yeah. I'm going to have you guess a couple later. I've got a couple.
Chase is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd be 0 for whatever, how many fights we've done so far. Loosa, he's a good talent. Like he's a high output striker, very basic striker, and I mean that in a compliment way. Like he's good at the basics. He works behind a jab. He follows through with a good straight right. He's accurate. I love that he attacks with combinations. I like that he switches his stances of mid combination when attacking. That's like one of my favorite things. He watches his shot a little too much instead of like quickly returning it in his defense, which leaves him open to counters. But I like that he works the body. Now he did struggle to get inside against Benoit, but like one, he showed he has a really good shin because he got tagged up by Lizaz a little bit. He also got his body beat up, but like that's a good fighter. Mm-hmm. Much higher than Rhys McKee. I like his inside kicks. I hate the pillars for defense. I also didn't like that he struggled with some of the pressure from AJ Fletcher, but he can sneak in a takedown or two, but he isn't a wrestler. But he showed solid takedown defense. He stuffed some takedowns from AJ Fletcher, and he's got good, like he showed good cardio against Benoit Lizaz. But then he gassed out against AJ Fletcher. But I think that had more to do with fighting in Salt Lake City. And despite being gassed, he still found a way to win against AJ Fletcher. Mm-hmm. Rhys McKee, you said it. He's not a strong athlete, But to his credit, he's looked a lot better outside of the UFC. Yeah. He looked terrible in the UFC, but he's picked up some quality wins. Mm-hmm. He's fighting in Cage Warriors and stuff. So that's always a good regional scene. There's regional scenes, and then there's like those upper echelon regional scenes. Like that's the one you go back to, and that's your farm system.
Yeah,
he's a long and lengthy striker, technically sound. He pumps out a jab, which is probably his best weapon. Decent pop, a lot of calf kicks, though he does throw them without a setup. He's good at being a range striker, but he can be drawn into a brawl, which isn't the smartest thing based on like what his tools are. He does stand up too tall for my liking. He lacks head movement. He backs straight up. Despite a win against Jim Wallhead, a fight that he won fairly handily, he still didn't like the pressure from Wallhead in a one-sided fight. A weak offensive wrestler, weak. I mean, you mentioned weak defense. Right? Alex Morano got 3 takedowns against him. Well, he was taken down by Jim Walhead despite winning in a blowout. He does have 3 submission wins. He's a builder too. Like, he gets stronger as the fight goes on, so I like that. And he has the cardio to go deep in the fight. I mean, he's fighting in championship fights, outside the UFC. I'd say this is a solid scrap. McKee looks way better than I last remembered him. I think we can have a great matchup on the feet, particularly. But I'm taking Loosa in probably a closer battle than you're saying. I think he's going to have to get past the range of McKee. Once he does, he gets inside. I actually think I'm with you. I agree with you. I think it's going to be the wrestling, having a wrestling edge. I can't see someone watching Rhys McKee fights and not want to turn into a wrestling match. So give me Loosa. I'll say gets a win by decision.
We head now to the men's featherweight division for a matchup between 2 debuting fighters from Europe in Morgan Charriere and Manolo Zecchini. Charriere, the 27-year-old Frenchman, is 18-9-1 overall. As I said, this will be his first fight in the UFC, but he comes in off of a pretty impressive run in Cage Warriors, including a 3-fight win streak leading into Saturday's card. He'll be taking on Zecchini. The 26-year-old Italian is 11-3 overall. He has been fighting primarily in Venator FC, which is probably Italy's top native promotion, where he comes in on a 2-fight win streak. Odds here heavily favor the Frenchman. He is minus 300. Zecchini plus 240. Keith, his name is Zecchini, not Zucchini, but this does feel like a bit of a squash match. I have a question for you about Morgan Charriere.
Look at you.
And I'm going to flip
Nice
this
job.
one to you. Back in like 2017, Morgan Charriere lost a unanimous decision to Saladin Parnasse. And I think Saladin Parnasse might be the best featherweight outside of the UFC and Bellator right now. Like, I super believe in him as a prospect. Since then, he's got all wins except for here is his non-wins: a majority decision loss, a split draw, a majority decision loss, a split decision loss, and a majority decision loss against 9 wins. It's been 6.5 years since 3 judges could agree that Morgan Charriere had lost a fight. Do you think there's something about his fight style that just leaves him prone to split decisions, kind of in the way that we talk about, Jorge Masvidal or Bobby Green?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's boring.
Yeah. All right. Well, and let me know if he makes this one interesting against Zecchini. Tell me how you think this fight goes.
Yeah, the most exciting thing about him is his nickname, the Last Pirate.
That's cool as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is he's a low output striker. Like, he's very good, but he can be way too patient. I mean, like, even fights that he's dominating. Like, I was looking at his, I think it was his last fight. He was going against Diego Silva. Yeah, it was his last fight. Mm-hmm. He was like so much better. Like, you could tell about halfway through the fight, Diego Silva was fighting just to hang on. And yeah, he got a knockout right at the very end of the fight. But there was so many portions of that fight. It was watching paint dry. It's like, dude, go for the kill. You're so take a chance, dude. You're so much better than this guy.
It's almost like Frank Mir versus Crow Cop, where you're almost mad that he knocked him out at the end because, like, dude, you could have done that in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. So because he's got a lot of tools. Like, he's good. He's got fast hands, tight shots. He's got a nice left hook. He's got power in both hands. I mean, he's got 10 knockouts. So, like, I know people say, "Oh, he's boring." The guy's got 10 knockouts. So it's like, people. I know somebody be like at us, like, "How are you calling boring? He's got 10 stoppages in 18 fights." But, like, how many of them, like, could he get more, or it could have been quicker, or whatever? Yeah, he coasts in. He's got heavy leg kicks. First of all, he dropped Diego Silva, like, I think twice in like 2 minutes into the fight with just leg kicks. So he's a very powerful guy. You look at him, he's ripped and everything. But he does throw naked leg kicks, so he's open to that. But I like that he checks leg kicks, which is a riff. He's a good grappler. He's not a wrestler, but he's a good grappler. He's got 3 subs on his record, and he's very hard to take down. He's got some solid takedown. From what I've seen, he's got some solid takedown against. Now, Zecchini, I love that he's only 26. Like, I like that he's very aggressive. Like, I very well. We'll get to that later. He's very aggressive.
Yeah.
He loves his lead left hook. He does like looping, jumping left hook at guys. He can be very wild. Loads up on everything. He can overthrow his punches. Being too aggressive, which opens to be countered. He throws a lot of hard shots, good power. He's got 9 KOs. His last fight, he landed a flying knee knockout in a spectacular finish. Quick high kick. He doesn't check like he's definitely open to that. He makes the mistakes of dropping his hands. He will look to wrestle, but he isn't a good wrestler. Most of the time he gets a fight to the ground, it's like he's catching a kick or something. He's got 1 submission win, so if he gets to the ground, he's probably not a threat to Charriere. I'm sorry, apologize if I was saying his name wrong. But because of his reckless style, he has gassed out before. Like he's on the gas all the time. Zecchini could win because of his output. If Charriere cruises and does the I'm not getting hit, so I'm winning kind of thing, like he could just lose the the optics of it. Like if it just looks, from the judges that he's not matching the output. But Charriere, as much as he's boring or he can cruise, he's got tools and he's sharp. When he lets his hands go, he's a sharp striker. He reminds me of, who's the guy? Hakeem Dawodu.
Oh, I love that comparison. That's like perfect.
You know what I mean? Like Dawodu's really technical and he's good, but he like fights like I thought so. I wasn't on the recap, but I thought he beat Cub Swanson. Mm-hmm. That says it shouldn't have been in the realm of possibility that Cub Swanson could win that fight. Like anytime he threw his hands, it was counter. He pieced him, just like step on the gas, dude. And you probably would. I don't know if he would have ended him, but he would have trashed him so bad that it wouldn't have been a close fight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel like this. If Charriere just goes on the gas, he wins. I think he's gonna let loose a little bit, and I think that's because of Zecchini style. Zecchini's gonna come after him. So I can see Charriere like brutalizing the calves, and then I think because of Zecchini's style, he's gonna walk right into a kill shot. Probably be something late again, probably like a 3rd round knockout, but give me Charriere by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, I really like the breakdown there. My problem is that, and this is something that I feel like I say every week about at least one of the fighters that are debuting. Manolo Zecchini has compiled a pretty impressive highlight reel in Europe, but he's done it by engaging in habits that he will not be able to get away with against better fighters. I mean, in his last 4 fights, he's 3-1 in his last 4 fights, and he's been fighting multiple guys with below 500 records, and below 500 records by the standards of like Venator, which is not that high level of promotion. Like he is teeing off on bad fighters.
He's an Astro team type guy.
Yeah. No, it is kind of like an Italian Astrofight team type thing. And I can understand why, because he is a young guy who actually does have some skills, has some athletic upside, and looks like the picture on a poster of a good fighter. I can understand why Venator would consider him one of Italy's more promising homegrown talents and, want him to do well. Like, I'm not saying there's even anything like bad or shady about that. Hell, if he was a boxer, he'd be punching dead bodies right now until he was like 18-0. But the main problem is that, yeah, he is hyper aggressive and he's never fought anybody that could really, really make him pay for that. I mean, he's lost a couple fights, but he hasn't just been lamped. And running straight at Morgan Charriere and throwing a bunch of volume is almost the only thing that consistently wakes him up and makes him fight. That plus this being, again, him fighting in a French fighter in front of a French crowd, finally getting the call up to the UFC, because Charriere is exactly the kind of guy that I'm almost surprised that Bellator hasn't snatched up for European cards before. I'm saying Charriere fights against type and pulls the trigger. I'm saying that Zecchini fights 2-type and gives him plenty of chances to do so. Give me Charriere by second round TKO here. I think he's going to be able to sidestep Zecchini's on rushes pretty easily. He's going to chew up his legs and probably set him up for a kill shot on the feet. Next up at UFC Paris is a men's bantamweight matchup between two debuting European prospects in Yanis Ghemmouri and Caolan Loughran. Ghemmouri, the 28-year-old Frenchman, is 12-1 overall. He comes into this fight on a 9-fight win streak, primarily in Brave CF, where he has become a featherweight standout. A little more on that in a moment. He gets the call here, and he gets it against another debuting fighter in Loughran. The 27-year-old Irishman is a perfect 8-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He comes in on a 4-fight win streak in Cage Warriors, where he is the sitting bantamweight champ. Odds here favor the Irishman pretty heavily. He's minus 305. Ghemmouri out there at plus 245. Keith, I mean, I can't speak for the bookmakers nor for the bettors who, help push those lines. But part of the issue might be that in Ghemmouri's last 4 fights, he's only actually fought a bantamweight once. He's fought at featherweight, a 143-pound catchweight, bantamweight, and featherweight. And, here he'll be dropping to 135, for his UFC debut, or dropping back to 135. Tell me, if you think this line makes sense. Tell me if you see top 15 type upside for either of these gentlemen, and tell me how you think this fight goes.
Give me the line one more time.
Loughran is minus 305, Ghemmouri plus 245.
No, absolutely not. So no, I don't agree with the line. I don't believe it makes sense. As far as I don't see top 15 upside in either one of these guys. Especially at bantamweight. I already said that earlier. Yeah, Loughran, Irish MMA is just different than any other MMA there is. Just every person who comes from Ireland, they get overhyped, even whether it's good or bad. I don't want to say overhyped because overhyped sounds weird, but they're going to come with a lot of hype. Some guys it's warranted, some guys it isn't, and whether Loughran is that guy, we're going to find out. But I just mean he's undefeated from Ireland. That's why he's negative 305. But should he be the favorite? Yeah, probably. By that margin? No, I don't think so. Now I might sound like an idiot when this is all done, but he's a short, stocky guy, very physically sharp. I mean, he's a bull. Yeah. But he's a minus athlete. He doesn't move well. He's very unorthodox. He's kind of stiff on the feet, if I'm being honest. He's a pocket boxer that he uses a lot of jabs to get inside, short, tight hooks. He hits hard, but he's very hittable defensively. He lacks head movement. He throws a lot of kicks. Despite having power, he actually pulls his punch a little. He pulls back a little bit when he's punching. If he steps in, he that could be a real problem. He's not a wrestler at all. I haven't seen too much of him on the ground. I mean, he does have 2 submission wins. But one thing I really like, he seemed like he has some pretty solid takedown defense when I've seen him. Ghemmouri, he's a Muay Thai striker. He's a bit of a counter striker. He's a bit of a stationary target, like the classic Muay Thai striker, not moving a lot. He will fight out of both stances. I love his step back check left hook from the orthodox stance. That's something he looks for a lot. He tends to throw a lot of single strikes, which I don't like, but he's got a very good kicking game, like quick high kick, good calf kicks. He likes those John Jones oblique kicks. Defensively, he pulls his head straight back, but he'll wrestle. He'll shoot for a takedown. He's pretty good at cutting the corner. He has 4 submission wins. So you asked me, do I believe that the line was correct, and then it was Loughran negative 300?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think it's correct because he's not going to win. I think Ghemmouri's going to kick Loughran's legs out. I think when Loughran steps in the pocket, I think he's going to close the distance. I think Ghemmouri's going to turn this into a wrestling match. I think Ghemmouri's going to win by decision.
I'm leaning that way as well. I lean harder that way if Ghemmouri had fought at 135 anytime in the last 2 years or so. Like, that makes me nervous. Like, I'm seeing in my mind him handling Loughran, keeping him at range, just really outclassing him with footwork, and then just gassing out hard at about the 8-minute mark and just having to hold on for dear life. But I'm leaning the same way you are. On the one side, Loughran's 4 wins in Cage Warriors have been legit. He's beaten good guys.
Yeah, that's fair.
A couple of them. I mean, well, 3 of the 4 he handed them their first career loss, and the other, Luke Shanks, is a decent guy for the region as well. Who, I mean, he's not super young, but he's the kind of guy that could have made it to the Contender Series or the UFC or Bellator if things had just shaken a little differently. So, I mean, it is impressive that he is just whomping all these guys with a pretty basic repertoire of like crosses and hooks. But everything I've seen from Ghemmouri just makes him look like a much classier striker and one who knows what to do with kind of bull rushing opponents that he has reach on. I expect him to win a decision over Loughran here. And the 2 ways that I could be really, really wrong about this are if Loughran is able to just crash the pocket and just clock him with an overhand early, or if Ghemmouri is compromised by the weight cut and he starts gassing out after the first round. Those are definitely possible. I mean, Loughran's a 3-1 favorite for, a reason. People are pushing the line that way. But yeah, I'm seeing the upset here as well. So even though I really took a bath last week on my upset picks, I'm feeling this one as well. I got Ghemmouri by decision, even if it's a little more exciting than it needs to be.
But our consensus underdog pick hit.
Yeah.
Which hits often. This would be one of our biggest upset consensus picks. This is a pretty massive underdog.
Next up on the UFC Fight Night 226 main card is a featherweight matchup between William Gomis and Lucas Almeida. Gomis, I know it's Gomis. I'm probably going to keep slipping up and saying Gomis. At any rate, 26-year-old Frenchman, 12-2 overall, 2-0 in the UFC, on a 10-fight win streak since his last loss, which was, incidentally, to Morgan Charriere back about 7 years ago. Since joining the UFC around this time last year, he has decision wins over Yarno Aarons and Francis Marshall. He'll look to make it 3 in a row and maybe put a more definitive stamp on things, as he's had a majority decision and a split decision so far, and he will look to do it against Almeida. 32-year-old Brazilian is 14-2 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the Contender Series just about 2 years ago, lost a decision to Daniel Zellhuber, went back and won one more fight in Jungle Fight, and then got the call to the UFC, where he has a TKO win over Mike Trizano and a second-round submission loss to Pat Sabatini. The most recent of those, the Sabatini fight, was back in June at UFC on ESPN, Vettori versus Cannonier. Odds here favor the Frenchman. He's minus 170, Almeida plus 145. Keith, there are some things I guess about this fight, some things I think about this fight. The only thing I know about this fight is that these are 2 huge-ass featherweights. Enlighten me with more. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I got to be honest. I don't think I have a good read on either one of these guys, because Almeida looked fantastic against Trizano. That he looked terrible against Sabatini, but I think Sabatini is really good. So Gomis, I mean, he's won 2 fights so far in the UFC, the first opponent, Aaron's, we just were talking about.
He was on your cut list.
Yeah, like I don't think he was UFC level, and then the Francis Marshall fight that didn't age that well either. So. Yeah, he didn't look spectacular in those. So you mentioned it. Almeida's huge. Though he's a minus athlete. He's a pressure counter striker with some basic fundamentals. He's a slip and ripper. He attacks with combinations. So he has good power. He avoids excuse me. He avoids strikes with like a lot of L stepping, very like boxing style. He likes to battle in the clinch. He will go for a takedown, but he's not a wrestler at all. He's a pretty weak defensive wrestler. Though he is a submission threat, he has 5 subs on the record. But though he was quickly submitted by Pat Sabatini in his last fight, so it's not like he's like some wizard on the ground. Gomis, southpaw. what I don't like about him is low output. You know, he's a kickboxer that he carries his hands low. He's a bit of a counter striker. He's got fast hands. He needs to let him go because he's got some fast hands based on his size and his explosiveness. He's got some power. Good kicking game. I like his teep kicks. He'll throw some spinning attacks, I'm not crazy about, but he will look for a takedown, especially like a reactionary takedown if you pressure him too much. But he isn't a wrestler at all. He doesn't control well on top. He almost got subbed by Aaron's in his UFC debut. He got taken down by Francis Marshall and struggled to get back up from the bottom. So, yeah, this is a tough call. Like, this is one of the ones I'm not confident, and not confident. Like, I think these guys are super equal. It's just I feel like I need to see more out of these guys to really understand what I got. I'm gonna go with Gomis. He's only 26, so he still can improve. I think he's faster on the feet. I think he should have the big advantage in the wrestling. I think he will wrestle. Like, that's one thing I will say to him. He seems like he's fairly intelligent of what he wants to do if he has advantage. So give me. I shouldn't say that sounds terrible. He's fairly intelligent. I mean that fight IQ. Now. I'm sure he's an intelligent guy. Yeah. You know what I meant. Give me Gomis by decision.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one that just, especially in the case of Gomis, I'm not sure what we've got. Like Almeida, where he's a little older, I feel as though I have a better handle on what his upside and what his limitations are. Whereas with Gomis, yeah, I'm not sure yet. Like, I was much higher on him as a prospect, even just a few months ago, but just the Aarons and Marshall wins, as you said, have not aged well. And considering that I was concerned when he came in over whether he was a guy that was getting by on physical tools and maybe wasn't ready skills wise, now I'm thinking maybe I still feel that way. I'm leaning Almeida here. And I'm not dead sure why, except that I think Almeida is actually better than the guys that Gomis has beat so far, and he barely beat those guys. And I agree that he should have a speed advantage over Almeida on the feet, probably actually have a shot-for-shot power advantage on the feet, even though, I mean, Almeida hits pretty hard too. I also think that if Gomis takes Almeida down, it may not end up the way he wants it to. Like, he's pretty good at those reactive surprise takedowns at fighters who are coming forward, but Almeida, just by having a little bit more of a focused ground game, I could see turning that to his advantage. Like, I could see him sweeping and ending up on top of Gomis, or just, finding a way to sub him from the bottom even. He's been perfectly willing to try that on the regional level. Give me Almeida in a bit of an upset here, and I'm going to say he actually gets the finish here. Give me Almeida by a second round submission. And it might be a fight where Gomis is pretty much winning the fight until he loses. We head now to the lightweight division for a clash between Benoit Saint-Denis and Thiago Moises. Saint-Denis, the 27-year-old Frenchman, is 11-1 with one no contest overall. He is 3-1 in the UFC. He is 3-0 at lightweight. He made a short notice debut at UFC 267 just under 2 years ago, up a weight class against Eliseu Soleski dos Santos, made it to the final horn in a beatdown of the year candidate, one of those fights that aroused controversy afterwards over whose fault it was that the fight wasn't stopped. People blaming the corner, blaming the ref, and so forth. But since then, he dropped back down to his natural weight class, and he's 3-0 with wins over Nicolas Stolze, Gabriel Miranda, and most recently, and most impressively, Ismael Bonfim, whom Saint-Denis handed his first career loss in July at UFC on ESPN Strickland versus Magomedov by first-round submission. So Benoit Saint-Denis riding quite the wave of momentum into a hometown clash with Moises. 28-year-old Brazilian is 17-6 overall. He is 6-4 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. He's had some highs and some lows. He has gotten into the title picture. I mean, he was probably in a title eliminator just over 2 years ago against Islam Makhachev, even if that very much did not go his way. But right now he's on a 2-fight win streak with submissions of Christos Giagos and Melchizael Costa. The most recent of those, the Costa fight, was at UFC 283 in January. Keith, the favorite in this fight is -145. The underdog is +125. Who are they?
I'm glad the line is close because to me, this is one of the best fights of the card. Moises is the favorite and Denis is the slight underdog.
It is the other way around. Benoit Saint-Denis -145. Thiago Moises +125. Okay, so
sorry, George. I went with he because he's like the bigger name and he's got the bigger, like he's beaten, he's fought in the main event and stuff. So that's what I was thinking.
Isn't it wild that these guys are only 1 year apart in age? Thiago Moises is 28 years old.
Yeah,
he's been through enough ups and downs that I just felt like he should be like 33.
Yeah, I agree.
But Saint-Denis, I was a little too hard on him after he showed so little against Isidro Santos. Just took such a hellacious beating that I assume, especially because he had been good but not great on the regional scene coming up. I was like, this guy is going to wash out of the UFC in 3 fights. And instead, he's one of the hotter prospects at 155. Tell me how you think this goes. Is Moises another stepping stone for the hometown hero here, or does Moises put himself back in the top 15 conversation by snuffing out the rising run?
Yeah, I'll say this. You said that Saint-Denis didn't show much against Zaleski. He showed that he's a tough SOB because he
yes,
like he took a beating and didn't stop. Like, I'll give him that. This is.
I mean, I know that Raquel Pennington is gay, but if they she wanted to have a kid with Tisha Torres and they wanted like Benoit Saint-Denis to be like the donor, like that kid would just come out like made of rock. Like the child of Raquel Pennington and Benoit Saint-Denis would just be completely indestructible.
What about the one that Valentina Shevchenko beat up? Who is the what's her name?
Priscilla Cachoeira?
Yeah, Cachoeira.
Yeah, well, then you'd have a kid made of stone that like to poke people's eyes out. And that sounds dangerous. So let's not do that.
This is a big step up in competition, though. Well, I mean, Bonfim was a really good win, but maybe at least in name value. I mean, yeah. Moises, if he beats Moises, would that be a bigger win than if he beat Dos Santos? Zaleski Dos Santos?
Absolutely. If he beat Dos Santos, maybe he stays at welterweight. And he's just another guy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're right. You're right. That's a good point. So Moises, he's on the feet. He's a low output striker. He's a bit flat-footed. Definitely boxing style. Some quick hands, tight striking, but doesn't throw a lot. I'd say plus power. He throws a lot of kicks, especially to the body. But he does well at mixing his striking with his takedown attempts because that's what his striking is for. His striking is to distract so he can set up a takedown. I say he's a decent wrestler, but I've said this before, but he struggles to kind of get to that second level. He kind of like dives at his opponent's hips. He'll often shoot, try to get in close. And then like he's one of these guys, he'll even pull the opponent to their guard. Like that's how bad he wants to get the fight to the ground. He's a very, very good BJJ practitioner. He's got 6 submission wins in his career, but like that's even though he has 6 submission wins in his career, like he's a bigger threat than that like projects. Mm-hmm. He's a risk taker though. Like he's dropped down and gone for ankles, and I mean he caught it on Michael Johnson and almost caught it on Bobby Green. But it is if you go down to an ankle, you're exposing your head. Now Saint-Denis, he's a really good athlete. Like that's the first thing that jumps out to me. Like he's more athlete than fighter. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. He's like the opposite of like a Gerald Mershad. Mm-hmm. Like he's a very good athlete. He's a guy who was like probably good at other sports and then like found MMA, or he's a guy
that like got kicked out of a soccer team for fighting.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, or even like a guy who's a really good athlete, but like your time ran out, and mm-hmm. and you're like, I just want to stay active. I don't want to go to the gym, and then like someone mentioned a fighting gym. He's looked really good in his last 3 fights. I'll say that. Especially his last one. He's a southpaw with fast hands. He's got good power, mean kicks. Defensively, he's got some holes. I mean, he keeps his chin too high in the air. He lacks head movement. Excuse me. But he's got a chin. I mean, we mentioned before he took a beat from Dos Santos, didn't stop. He's very physically strong, especially down at weight class, where he's not giving up size. He's got a little bit of a judo background. I love his body lock game and his hip control. He's good at that. He's got some good back takes. He's a very underrated grappler. He's got 7 subs in his record. The negative is he'll jump into like a guillotine or something instead of defending a takedown, which would be a huge issue against Moises. Now, he's even has more submissions than Moises does, but I don't think he's going to want to go to the ground with Moises. This is a really good matchup. To me, from Moises, this is even though he's I think he's won 2 in a row, you said, this is about him keeping his spot, proving that he's upper echelon, one of those guys in the division. This is Denis trying. Well, you know what? I'm trying to think. If Denis wins, will that propel him? I'm not saying the rankings, in a sense, but like that, where people view him as like, wow, this guy's a rising star in the division, or will this be the opposite, where it's like, wow, Moises was never that good as we thought he was? I'm wondering what the talk will be about that. And then if Moises wins, will it be, wow, he's still like, he is what we thought he was. He's one of the top guys in the division who, wasn't that long ago was ranked, or it would be, Denis not that good. I really wonder what the narrative would be in this fight, because I think it's a fantastic matchup. I'm very intrigued by it. Moises has a massive advantage if he gets to fight to the ground. Like, I know on paper it doesn't look that way, but if it hits the ground, and I expect Moises to dominate. I'm really torn. I'm guessing he doesn't get it there. I think Denis is such a better athlete. I don't trust Moises' durability due to that like KO loss to Joel Alvarez. I'm gonna say Denis has a coming out party. I say he catches him in a back and forth war, and I'll say he knocks him out. I'm gonna say no, I won't say he knocks him out. I'll just say we have a war, and he at the end he's the one standing. I'll say Denis wins by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there a lot. It's and with Moises, I don't think that it's that he was necessarily overestimated and now he's come crashing back to earth. I think that at least as of right now, at this stage in his development, at age 28, having trained for the bulk of his professional career, at a really good team, an American top team, he's kind of hit a plateau and he is what he is. Because the thing is, he's not lost to any bad fighters. And the fighters he's lost to all have something in common. They've all been big, huge. He's lost to some of the biggest, strongest lightweights in the division. Beneil Dariush, Damir Ismagulov, Islam Makhachev, and Joel Alvarez, who actually blew weight for that fight, and he's fucking titanic. The fighters who've beaten Moises have either been able to keep from going to the ground with them, or they've gone to the ground and they've been good enough there that they can kind of ignore or counter his submission offense and beat him up on the ground. Like Islam Makhachev had zero fear of going to the ground with Moises. It was like a junior version of Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira.
But in fairness, Makhachev, he went to the ground with Charles Oliveira. Some people are different,
but that's that's almost what I'm saying. It's like Moises has never lost a fight that he should have won. Like each fight he won or he's lost, I can understand why. Like Joel Alvarez was just too big, too strong. Moises could not get him to the ground. He didn't have time to, but even if he tried like sliding for a leg lock or pulling guard, I think Alvarez would have just shucked him off and kept beating him up. And once he caught him against the cage, it's not, once you get hit with a couple of those elbows, I don't even think it's a question of chin anymore. Like nobody was withstanding that beating. Ismagulov and Dariush, neither of them are off the charts athletes, but they're reasonably smooth athletes and they're both huge guys. Everyone else, he's either just dominated by being better or he's caught their mistakes and made them pay for them. Like, I mean, he got pieced up by Michael Johnson in the first round of their fight. Johnson made one mistake and it was over in less than 30 seconds. I think his win over Christos Giagos was him just taking advantage of where he had the advantage in the fight. He's much, much better ground fighter. And Giagos wasn't the kind of guy who could keep things on the feet and just keep beating them up. But I think the win over Melquizael Costa might end up aging well. I think Costa is going to have a sneaky good run in the UFC. All that the long way around to say that Denis matches the template of the fighters that have given Moises fits in the UFC. He's huge. He's athletic. He's very strong. And he's not really prone to mistakes. Like, I mean, he has flaws in his game, but he doesn't have just moments of inattention where, you know, you can shoot the torpedo into the Death Star and it blows up. I think I'm leaning towards Saint Denis even harder than you are, because I think even if this goes to the ground, I think Saint Denis could survive takedown, or it could survive submission attempts while punishing Moises from top position. Like, if Moises ends up on top, Saint Denis needs to shrimp, kick him off, and get the fuck out of there. But if Saint Denis is on top, especially if like Moises pulled guard with like a bad guillotine or something, I think Saint Denis could camp out there and maybe do him some damage. So I'm leaning towards Saint Denis. It sounds like even harder than you are. And I'm going to say he gets it done inside the distance. Give me Benoit Saint Denis to get a round 2 TKO after punishing Moises pretty badly on the feet. And I'm saying, yeah, maybe this does end on the ground after a, you know, desperation takedown attempt by Moises either gets pancaked or he pulls guard and Saint Denis finishes it down there.
Yeah, I just want to correct something real quick. I said that Moises had 6 submission wins. He actually has 8 submission wins. I just haven't updated my notes since his last 2 wins were by submission. So shame on me. Man's got to have a code.
Yeah, that's a Wire reference.
Oh, nice job, man.
Third from the top at UFC Paris is a light heavyweight matchup between Volkan Oezdemir and the debuting Bogdan Guskov. Oezdemir, the 33-year-old fighter from Switzerland, is 18-7 overall. He is an even 6-6 in the UFC. He's coming into this fight off of a loss. He competed last October at UFC 280, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Nikita Krylov. Prior to that, he had a unanimous decision win over Paul Craig last July. He had been scheduled to take on Azamat Murzakanov, the streaking undefeated light heavyweight contender. Murzakanov withdrew on the 15th, so in steps Guskov on what will end up being about 2 weeks' notice. The 30-year-old from Uzbekistan is 14-2 overall. He comes into this fight on a 4-fight win streak, primarily in, if we're being honest, kind of second and third line CIS promotions, but nonetheless, 4 straight first round knockouts, 3 of those 4 in under 2 minutes, 2 of those 4 in under 30 seconds. The guy fights like he's double parked and his car's on fire. You know, if you can keep that streak going in the UFC, you'll be seeing a lot more of him. He is not favored to keep the streak going, but he's not the underdog by much. Oezdemir, despite his long run as contender and former title challenger, is just minus 160. Guskov plus 130 on the comeback. Keith, I don't know how good Volkan Oezdemir is right now. I feel as though he's an old 33. Like, his athleticism is fading, his gas tank is fading, his chin is fading.
Yep.
But at the same time, some of those things were never that great, even when he was really, really good. He's a guy that fought his way to an interim title fight, despite being one of the more limited high-level contenders in the UFC in terms of his skill set. I mean, his ground game is practically non-existent. And while he has actual kickboxing experience, I mean, he left MMA after his first career loss. Like, he fought in Bellator a couple times. He lost in like 2014, and he disappeared soon thereafter for like 2 years to pursue an actual kickboxing career. In practice, he's mostly a slugger that throws some kicks on, and doesn't. And especially as he's gotten older and maybe, I don't know, maybe his skills have deteriorated, he's become much more of kind of a headhunter knockout merchant, like where his punches seem to get less setup than they used to. Just fighters with a more, with a more nuanced striking game seem to be able to handle him these days. I mean, obviously he got destroyed by Daniel Cormier, and Cormier is a much better fighter, but Cormier was also piecing him up easily on the feet before he even bothered to take him down. Like Cormier was.
DC's one of the such an underrated striker.
Yeah, extremely underrated striker, but he was like bouncing into range effortlessly, just tagging him in the face. I know that Oezdemir can still hit like a truck, but having said that, the last person he actually knocked out in the UFC was Jimmy Manuwa over 6 years ago.
Yeah, I'm
since
glad
then,
you said that.
He's hit some people squarely, and they've not gone away. And because of that, I can understand why he's only a -160 favorite over a guy in Guskov that is untested, to say the least. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you probably see Bogdan Guskov's Fight Finder picture. There's no truth to the rumor that I just took a picture of Anthony Smith and in Photoshop and just stretched it out by 50% side to side. But that is exactly what the hell he looks like. And from the video I've seen of him, he's a caveman version of Oezdemir. He is a very aggressive, reasonably athletic guy that comes forward and tries to knock people out with punches and considers the floor to be lava. There are some guys in the UFC light heavyweight division that he could probably beat. It's an aging division with a lot of limited fighters in it. And he hits hard enough that, I mean, he could probably put just about anyone down that he hit cleanly. But unless Oezdemir is even more faded than I think Guskov is kind of tailor-made for him to handle. Oezdemir's chin is not what it once was, but it's not completely gone. And even if he's a pretty limited kickboxer himself, I think he's definitely niftier than Guskov. I expect that this is going to just turn into a vicious slugfest within the first 60 seconds. Oezdemir might have the presence of mind to know that he really cannot afford another loss right now and might try to fight at a more measured pace. I don't think Guskov is going to give him the chance to. I think Guskov knows that coming in on short notice, his best chance is just to aim for another 30-second knockout. But I think he's probably the one that's going to end up on the wrong end of things. Give me Volkan Oezdemir to win this by first round knockout. And if he does, it's going to be because Guskov forced the issue. If Oezdemir tries to fight a more measured fight and Guskov lets him, then I think Oezdemir probably just wins a pretty ho-hum kickboxing match and just probably wins all 3 rounds. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping this is fast and ugly, and that's my pick. Oezdemir by first round knockout.
Yeah, this is I'm intrigued by this fight because I do think it might answer some questions about what does Oezdemir have left. Is he still a top 15 guy? If he is, obviously he should be able to get by a guy like Gustav. It's also going to answer questions like, is Gustav, is he a guy with a padded record, or is he really this, the second coming of Francis Ngannou or something like this? Because the way he does, you look at his record, he knocks guys out in seconds. Like it's, go ahead, you said
I'm just the second coming of Rumble Johnson would be a fair question to ask, I think.
Yeah.
Only in terms of fighting.
Okay. Oezdemir, he's I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. For a guy who was a ranked fighter, a guy who I know he's still ranked, but a guy who fought for UFC title, I think he was never a great athlete. He's one of the weaker athletes in the division, especially of the ranked fighters. I do believe he's slowed down. He's kind of flat-footed. He does march forward. He's plotting. He always was a high volume striker, though I think that's declining. He is a short, tight inside boxer that slides in the mid-range to land shots with his left hook being his best punch. But I mean, he's got very good power, but it is overrated. As you mentioned, it's been, was it like 4 years? Was it 4 years of it? What'd you say?
It's been like 4 years. I said Manoa, but he actually finished a Lear Latifi with strikes too.
Yeah, that's my point. Like but regardless, whether it was 4 years, 6 years, the whole point is like they make it sound like it's Sergey Pavlovich out there, and it's not. Like he's one of these guys. He's got this reputation of being. It's Jeremy Stevens. You know, you get this reputation of knocking guys out. And they're like, oh, well, the last time we knocked somebody out, and you're like, oh, wait, you know. He's a very good close quarter striker. Like if he can get inside, he can dirty box, he can do that. He can wrestle a little bit. Like we always think about his striking, but he can wrestle. I mean, offensively, he got takedowns against Don McRae, he got takedowns against Andy Smith, Paul Craig. Even his last fight, in the fight that he looked terrible, and he got a takedown against Nikita Krylov. But he struggles defensively. I mean, like, yeah, sure, DC throws around pretty much anybody not named John Jones. But like Nikita Krylov was taken down with ease. And now Nikita Krylov always been like a more decorated wrestler, definitely a more technical wrestler too, but he was taken on easily. He struggles to get back off the bottom. Now he's a decent topside grappler if he's out on top, but he isn't a submission threat. I will give him credit that he didn't get submitted by Paul Craig, but he showed in that fight fight IQ, refusing to grapple with Craig. So he's at the point where I think his physical tools have declined, but I think he's still one of these guys who's crafty enough to still get victories. But the thing that was really concerning about the Krylov fight was not that he got out wrestled, because we've seen that before, is that his cardio seemed to be shot against Krylov, which might not be the case in this fight, because this fight might be like both guys shot at a cannon and see who's standing at the end. I think that's what we're hoping for. Guskov, obviously this is a very tough test in your UFC debut. Stepping up and taking on a guy like Volkan Oezdemir on short notice. He's a striker that he drops his hands and he kind of throws from down by his waist, but he throws straight up shots from there. Very good, like, power, very good straight shots. I love that he does a lot of the same side attacks. It's so unconventional. Like he'll throw a straight right and then follow it up with another like straight right down without still on the left. He's got serious power. He's got 12 knockouts, knocking guys out. All seem like they're all quick and early. So it's so hard. I mean, just keep seeing him fighting. Not the worst competition, but definitely like levels below Volkan Oezdemir, knocking him out with ease. I was watching one fight where he knocked a guy out probably about 2 or 3 minutes in, and as soon as he started throwing combination, the guy was like turtling up, and the guy wanted out, and it just was prolonged a couple minutes. He defensively, he keeps his chin a little too high in the air, but he does have pretty good head movement. I haven't seen much of his wrestling offensively, but I've seen his takedown defense because he hurts guys and guys shoot. So it's not like the most like something I get super excited about, because the guys aren't really shooting takedown. They're more like desperate hurt. But yeah, when he's on top, I saw some vicious ground and pound. So this is, it comes down to how quick Oezdemir is declining. Whether he's shot. I wish I had more tape study on Gustav besides him starching cans. I do think we have a first round TKO. I think you picked the wrong guy. I'm going to say Gustav does it. I'm going to go with a big upset. And I know you said it wasn't a big upset, but if I wrote in my notes big upset, because I thought Oezdemir was going to be like a 2.5, maybe 3-1 favorite. So give me Gustav. I'm going to say Oezdemir's done. I'm going to say Gustav knocks him out.
What round?
First round.
All right. So we both think this is over by first round knockout. We will see who is right. We'll stay friends afterwards, no matter what, because this fight just doesn't matter that much.
Ben, let's be honest. Why would you lie to our listeners? We're not friends. Mike Fridley makes us do this every single week. You go to Mike, you say, "Can I stop doing the show?
Can I stop doing this?" Like, we got people lining up that want to. Oh man, I mean, no tape study. I think Azamat Mirzakhanov would have just mopped the floor with those.
I totally, especially yes. I think that would have been a slaughter. I agree.
Just takedown clinic, yeah.
Click down, even on the feet, maybe. Like, he throws hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
With that, we come to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 226, a high-stakes women's flyweight matchup between Manon Fiorot and Rose Namajunas. Fiorot, the 33-year-old French woman, is 10-1 overall. She is 5-0 in the UFC with just a very logical march up the rankings, having beaten Victoria Leonardo, Tabitha Ricci, Mayra Bueno Silva, Jennifer Maia, and most recently, last October at UFC 280, perennial contender Katlyn Chookagian. She won a unanimous decision there. She's looking to make it 6 in a row and perhaps mint herself the next challenger for the winner of the rematch between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso later this month. To do so, she'll have to get through Namajunas, the 31-year-old Wisconsin native by way of Colorado, is 11-5 overall. She's 9-4 since joining the UFC out of season 20 of The Ultimate Fighter. All 13 of those fights so far have taken place at strawweight, a run that saw her win the title twice and still be very much in the argument for the greatest strawweight of all time. I mean, whether you think she is or not, like, it's not ridiculous to make the case, but for a variety of reasons, she decided her best way forward lay at the 125-pound division, fighting for the first time since dropping her title to Carla Esparza last May in a rather mystifying performance. She steps up to 125 pounds to take on Fiorot. Keith, the favorite is -185. The underdog is +150. Who are they?
Oh, first of all, that line is off. This should be as close to a pick 'em a fight as it should be. -185. I have no idea. I'm thinking Manon Fiorot is the favorite because, you know, the size difference and all that, but the name value of Rose. This is really entertaining podcasting, I'm sure.
I mean, if it gets that long, I'll snip it out, but they can wait 5 seconds for you to think.
Yeah. They watch a 2-hour show. They're like complaining about the 5 seconds I don't get back. Damn, dude, I don't know. I'm just shocked. I'm shocked by the line that it's not like basically a pick 'em. I go Rose. Rose is the favorite.
Your favorite is Manon Fiorot, -185, underdog.
You think every time it's a 50-50 shot I get it right one of these times.
Namajunas is +150. Okay, question number 2 for you. Namajunas dropped the title last May. If you don't remember that fight, I don't blame you. It was, one of the most famously terrible title fights of all time. Assuming Namajunas made the decision that, hey, if I'm ever fighting again, the belt now belongs to a woman that's beaten me twice, and decided to move up to 125. The belt now belongs to someone that she's beaten twice. Do you like her decision to go up to 125, or do you wish she had a 115-pound fight booked sometime this year?
I like it well, it depends. I'm going to say it 2 different ways. As a fan, I like her moving up, get new matchups, exciting matchups. I mean, if she goes on a run, say she goes on a run, and let's just say Valentina Shevchenko gets the belt back, wouldn't that be fun? Them two going at it.
Yeah.
I mean, really anybody. I mean, if Alexa Grasso beats Valentina Shevchenko again, I mean, yeah. Rose adds. I mean, to me, 125 has become the best division, and I don't know if it's the best, but it just seems like
at the top, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
bottom ranges where people can still headlock throw each other is a little rough.
Yeah, but I mean, you got Alexa Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko, these 2 women right here. You have Erin Blanchfield. I still think Talia Santos is a stud. Macy Barber. I mean, there's 7 right there off the top of my head. I'm sure there's some 1 or 2. Oh, what's the Irish Scottish girl there? Scottish by Canada, by everywhere of the world. She's
Casey O'Neill.
Casey O'Neill is someone to be excited for. I'm sure there's a couple other that I'm not thinking of, but what's the Talia Silva, who looked really good? I don't know if she's in that group yet, but she looked really good last week. So it's just a really good division. So as a fan, I'm excited about that. Now, if I'm her team, I'm her manager, I'm her coach, I'm Pat Barry or something like that. I'd rather have her. I mean, you already, like you exactly said, you're already being the champion twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't want to see a third fight, but if you're gonna have the third fight, the challenger, the one up 2-0, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we don't use the word ducking any more than we use the word scared. But if she stayed at 115 and the UFC gave her any guff about a title shot at Zhang, like she's got a case to make.
The problem is two other people that can make really strong cases right now. One being a fight that I'm surprised not more people are talking about, maybe because I'm on this side of the world. But Yan Xiaonan, like her and Weili Zhang, how that's to me, I mean, the more the UFC waits, the bigger threat of that not happening. I think, to me, to make it happen in China immediately. Like Weili Zhang's next fight should be in her in China.
Yeah.
Obviously you have Tatiana Suarez, kind of the boogie woman of the division. So you have two people ahead. You know what's going to be one of those weird, like, wow, I can't believe this happened, is Carlos Esparza having 2 wins over Rose Namajunas. I mean, but when you really dig into it, why she has 2 wins, it makes a lot of sense. Like, one was a very young Rose Namajunas who was kind of nowhere near her peak. Well, Carlos Esparza kind of was. I don't know if she was at her peak, but she was pretty close to her prime. And then the way the second fight happened,
Yeah.
But it's just one of those ones, like, I feel if Rose Namajunas and Carlos Esparza fought 10 times, Rose is when not only say 9, I'll say 8 now. I still think, like, she wins the next 8 fights if they do, but I'm very surprised. Like, if you were betting, if you were setting the lines, what would you set this line as?
Well, I would have had Montefiore as the favorite.
Okay.
But I probably would have had it like -140 plus 115.
Okay.
And I'm sure bettors would have, pushed it in whatever direction they were going to push it. I'm curious to see what they do to the line, because Namajunas has great name recognition. The UFC is going to be able to put together an absolutely sizzling highlight reel for her.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets pushed into a pick'em by fight night. I don't know.
That's a big line to big. Would you say -185?
Yeah, -185.
Yeah, if I was setting the line, I was thinking like Montefiore -110, Rose +1. Like, I'd had as close to pick, or maybe the other way around. Going up in weight, obviously, is such a big mystery. Being that she looked so terrible in her last fight. She didn't look terrible. She didn't do anything.
Right.
But I mean, like, that hurts her. If she was, for example, if she beat Carlos, all right. How about this? Say she wins that fight. I mean, they could easily give that fight to Rose, and then she doesn't defend for a year. She wants to move up. They go without some reason they don't give her the title. The champion doesn't go against champ. She's coming up as a champion. Is she not the favorite right now?
That's actually a fair point.
Like, just because one judge gives, I don't know, was it unanimous split? I can't remember, but I try to block that fight.
It was split.
Okay, so one judge gives to her instead of, because as he counted up the total strikes, he has it 6-5 for Rose or whatever it was, like a baseball score.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she'd be the favorite right now. I mean, she was out for a long time. I mean, I feel like Montefiore been out for a long time too. So, do you want me to break this down?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
The one last thing I'd add is moving up a division always, creates, like it creates more questions about the fighter that's moving.
Yeah,
it's not like she's moving up to take on Miranda Maverick or Erin Blanchfield that'd be smaller than her, even though she's moving up. She's moving on up to take one of the biggest, strongest women in the division.
Yeah, I looked at it. Like, height and reach wise is not necessarily the case. Like, she's only given up, I think, 2 inches in height and or 1 inch height and 1 inch of reach.
Right.
But like, the tail of the tape won't do its justice for the size. When they're in the clinch battle, and that's when you're going to see the size.
Montefiore is built like Valentina Shevchenko or Tyler Santos. She's got muscles. She's a ripped human. I also think I'm sure going across the world into France against the French woman probably
has something to do with the line. I mean, it'd be nice to actually get people who set the line and actually ask these questions to these people. Like, what do they take in besides just this person's better than that person? Yeah. Like, I'm just wondering what factors they do. I think what I'm going to be when I'm watching this fight, I think I'm going to be thinking the same thing. Like, damn, I wish I had a 4th and 5th round. It's just, to me, it's just one of those fights. I think you go to France. I don't think they needed Ciryl Gane versus Sergey Spivak as a main event. Like, I thought this could have served as a main event. Especially, based on Rose's, history with the belt and being, French, the top French female fighter in MMA ever. But ever. Yeah. I think this could have been a fantastic main event, and it's the fight I'm most excited about. This fight, or I don't want to say I'm excited, but it's one I'm most intrigued because, I don't know. I've said this before. The Rose Namajunas, Pat, and I know they have such a weird relationship, and it's very controversial. I'm not getting to that, but when I think of moments that people don't talk about, or that where 30 years from now people won't like. Moments in fights like that, almost to I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Moments that seem bigger than the fight itself, that didn't happen in the action. Like, I think about Rose Namajunas have Pat Barry saying to her who's the best? I'm the best. Who's the best? I'm the best. Like, I'm gonna always remember that moment. When I think of Rose Namajunas, it's like what we just had yesterday with the Korean Zombie, with the crowd is singing his song at his retirement. Like, that's a moment that I'm going to remember that more than the fight itself.
Yes.
Rose is a great athlete. She's very fast. She was very fast at 115. I expect it to be even faster at 125. She moves well. She's got great footwork. Sometimes focus a little too much on football work, which was kind of the case against her rematch against Carlos Esparza. She shows she can really get out of way strikes fairly easily. She has a rare ability to land strikes while backing up. One of the very few fighters who are good at it in MMA. Not many tells in her striking. Very good range striker from distance. Again, this is if nothing has changed since the Carlos Esparza fight. It's been a long layoff, so things might have changed. But she's still young, though. In fairness, at 31, she's an old 31 because she's been in MMA for not only has she been in MMA for a long time, but she's been fighting at the top level for a long time.
Yep.
And not just. And I don't mean that just the top level. You like being in the UFC. I mean like headlining UFC is like the fighting. I mean title fights and upper echelon. Yeah. She's like I said, she's not many tells in her striking. Very good range striker, fantastic jab, one of the best jabs in MMA. Great kicking game. I mean, she has that legendary high kicks. She can crack. I mean, she's always been you look at her, you don't. I mean, you look at Manolo, you expect her to hit hard. Rose, I mean, you don't expect her to have good power in her hands, but she's had, especially when she steps in because her technique is so good. She's won. I'm wondering if that moves up with her to 125. She's not someone who was like draining. I mean, like this, I don't think she was one of these ones who was draining her, power going down to 115. But we've seen it so many times when people go up, the power goes with them. I've kind of converted to that one. That generally, I think it does in the punching. I think it's more the grappling that's concerns me.
Oh, Rafael dos Santos, perfect example. Where he couldn't do the wrestling and grappling stuff he used to at 155 at 170.
Well, I think Cavalcanti too. Like Cavalcanti could crack guys at 185, but when they really got, you got like a Chris Weidman using his weight and size on him and grappling was kind of struggled a little bit. She's very intelligent. Like I always think of like she's very opportunistic with her wrestling. When people all pursue pressure, I always think of that second fight against JJ. I was in the building. I had it 2 rounds each. It was like a minute left in the fight. I had it about dead set in the 5th round. I'm like, anybody who has the next big moment is going to win this round. And she got it. She, in a fight, there was no takedown. She, in the heat of the moment, while the crowd's going crazy, the last minute of the fight, she drops down on a takedown and in my opinion, wins her the fight. It's just smart. She's a very slick grappler, super slick, very flexible, good at winning scrambles, good at advancing position, and she's a submission threat. Now, Manon Farreau, she's southpaw, technically sound striker. She also has good footwork. She's good at like small sidestepping to avoid strikes, and she's also good at when she's on the offense throwing strikes and sidestepping, cutting angles to give herself better spot to land shots. Fast hands. Surprisingly, she throws a lot of arm punches, which kind of tends to conserve her energy, but when she steps in her shots, she can crack. She loves to lead with her front hook. Like she'll, if she's in the southpaw stance, she's throwing like a lead, leading with the right hook. Her volume bothers me sometimes though, because she can coast. I think about the Jennifer Maia fight where it was so much closer than it should have been. But in fairness, against Caitlin Chikagian, she addressed that. Like her volume was much better. So I kind of almost put that Jennifer Maia one as like a exception to the rule, hopefully. Very good kicking game, fantastic teep kicks. She will wrestle a little bit, which is surprising. She's got good entries. I love another one, very similar to what I just said about Rose Namajunas. Late in their fight against Caitlin Chikagian, she shot and got a takedown, and she's got a strong top control. Going back to the lineup, this is an extremely hard fight to pick because there's so many question marks with Rose moving up. I really want to pick Rose. One thing about Rose is always the outside factors. I don't trust her motivation. Is she motivated? She's talked about on the record before about not wanting to be the champion and things like that. So always being really honest. I'm also I'm worried about the size difference, and Manon Rose doesn't have any really glaring weaknesses. She's very big for the weight class. I say we have a back and forth affair. Man, I have flip-flopped on this fight like 40 times. And it's more of a gut call now than it is what I see on film. Rose's intelligence to me is something that you can't really I mean, she didn't show it against Carlos Esparza, but generally speaking, it's something she's so good at. I think she sticks to moves. I think she uses her speed. I think she lands a takedown or two, and I think Rose Namajunas, throws her name right into the top of the rankings at flyweight. I think she pulls an upset. Give me Rose by split decision.
Wow, awesome. I mean, there's nothing I can say against any of what you've thrown out there. You encapsulated so well what's good as well as what's occasionally frustrating about both of these great fighters. Just a few things I'd like to just take my little highlighter and underscore. Rose is an old 31. I mean, on the intangible level, she is an old mind and an old soul in a young body. Like she is an intelligent, introspective, and sensitive person in a sport, frankly, full of meatheads on meatheads in both bathrooms. Like it's not a testosterone. Like there's plenty of female meatheads in the UFC, and she's never been that kind. And at her best, it made her sound like an angel in the first Jan Jacek fight. At the worst, as you pointed out, it can make her sound distracted, not committed, already looking on to the next thing, disliking what MMA forces her to do. Like during the lead up to the Esparza fight, and definitely afterwards, obviously, she sounded like someone who would rather have been doing something else with her time. So if moving up to 125 gets rid of I don't really have much more to prove anyway, then good, because it gets us more of what she does in the cage. And you're right. She's sublime. She took to the grappling side of things instantly, like a fish to water. Like her first viral moment was in her second fight, hitting a flying armbar in like 10 seconds on somebody, and Pat Barry running into the cage and losing his mind over. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. The first time I saw that video, I was like, who is this? And then you know what? In her very next fight, she fought Tisha Torres. She was like 20 years old. And the fight after that, She was in the Tough House. She turned 22 like a few weeks before she went on the Tough. So like her loss to Carla Esparza, she was 22 years old. She's been doing this at the highest level literally since she's been a physical adult. And while she's not taken horrible maulings in many of her fights, there aren't many fights where she looks like she's been through a wood chipper. It's a lot of fights. It's a lot of 5-round fights. It's a lot of training camps. It's, there's wear and tear there. She's grown into a strawweight body, and she's done it like gradually enough, and it's been subtle enough that you only really notice when you look back at old pictures of her. It's a little bit like John Jones. It's a little bit like Michael Jordan. Like you think of Michael Jordan just as, he was Michael Jordan the whole time. But when you look at his 97 with the Bulls, and then you look at him in 84, fresh out of college, he's put on 20 pounds of muscle.
That's right.
And he went from a guy that you can never stop me on my best day to a guy that you can never stop me ever. Yeah. And John Jones is the same. He's, even his last few fights at light heavyweight, he was just physically bigger and more muscular. Namajunas has got a little bit of that going on. Physically, I don't know about it as a career move. I don't know exactly how it'll go this weekend, but physically, if she was going to, now would be the time. Kind of like the John Jones thing, where I'm 31, there would be a point of diminishing returns for me if I stick at 115, 125 is where I go. Kind of like Jones at 35 saying, all right, now I'm moving up to heavyweight. Yeah, underratedly strong, underratedly powerful, very underrated knockout power, just because she doesn't look or talk or walk like a brutal knockout merchant. But what she did to Joanna in their first fight, I mean, only one other person has ever really knocked Jędrzejczyk out, and it's someone who looks like a bruiser. It's Weili Zhang with a spinning back fist from hell. The kick that Namajunas knocked Zhang out with, I still think if you just stop that and watch it frame by frame, it is one of the best head kick knockouts in MMA history. Not just because of the stakes, not because of what kind of gif it makes, but you watch it, there is no telegraphing. If you watch it frame by frame, you watch her hips and you watch her plant leg. It takes Zhang completely by surprise because there's no wind up to it. It's ninja shit.
Yeah.
Namajunas, when she's on, is one of the just most breathtaking offensive fighters the sport's ever seen. All that said, moving up to take on Manon Fiorot, I think Fior's the amount of hype the UFC is putting behind her and her highlight reel don't even truly do justice to what kind of run she's on. I mentioned that she's 5-0 in the UFC. Put aside that, she blew away Victoria Leonardo, who it turned out wasn't that good. But the other 4 women she's beat, Tabitha Ricci, Mayura Bueno Silva, Jennifer Maia, and Caitlin Chukagian, have 0 losses between them since they fought Manon Fiorot. Tabitha Ricci is 4-0 since then. Yeah. Mayura Bueno Silva is 4-0 since then and has moved up to bantamweight. Jennifer Maia is 2-0 since then, and the Chukagian fight was recently. Chukagian hasn't gone back into the cage yet, but it's not like she caught women on the downswing. She caught contenders who they ran into the wall that is Manon Fiorot, and then they got back on track and they went on to being contenders. And she fought every kind of fighter you could want to, like a hyper aggressive, hyper athletic wrestler in Ricci, even if she was undersized, a great bruising ground fighter in Mayura Bueno Silva, who's even been bullying bantamweights. Caitlin Chukagian, the ultimate nullifier, or even a lot of good strikers have not been able to adjust to and get past what Caitlin Chukagian does. And Manon Fiorot was not fazed by it. For as much as, I kind of praised all of Namajunas' underrated physical tools and underrated power, it's incredible how mature and intelligent a fighter Fiorot is for somebody with 11 pro fights. And part of it, might be that she's in her 30s and she had a boxing career before this, but she hasn't really even lost a minute of any of these fights. I'm not sure whether she's lost a round yet, but I don't think so. It just feels as though she's been in the driver's seat for all of these fights, as she's, again, just kind of happily scooted right on up the rankings. I feel like she's kind of a woman of destiny at this point. And if she beats Namajunas, this is going to be a super, super breakout moment for her. Because all the other intangibles are there. She has a marketable look. She's built like a model, like a fitness model, but she's very attractive. She has I mean, she has an underratedly kind of bubbly and voluble personality that I think is only going to be amplified if she gets a minute or two when they stick a mic in front of her face in front of, 20,000 people who understand French. I think she, seriously, I think she'll be like one of the breakout stars of 2023 if she gets a decisive win over Nami Younis here.
Could bet she got a knockout over in France. All the French bread flying in the air, the wine flying in the air, the cheese, you know.
I mean, Nami Younis is, a child of Lithuanian immigrants. If she wins, I guess like potatoes and turnips come flying.
Turnips.
Nami Younis at her best. There's a good chance that even despite Manon Fiore's physical advantages, would just find a way to completely outclass her. But it just adds, there's so many question marks coming into this fight, and they're all falling on Rosa's side. How will she look at 125? How are her intangibles? How's her mindset coming into this? It's one of those things where if this was her second fight at 125, well, one, the line might be different, and two, I might feel more confident taking her. But I'm 95% sure that we're going to get the best Manon Fiore we've ever seen in that cage on Saturday. And with Rose Namajunas, I'm about 50% sure that we'll get a top level Rose. Could 50% of Rose beat Fiore? Possibly. But I'm not betting on it. Give me Manon Fiore here. I only hope that Namajunas engages. I hope we get a fantastic 3-round firefight that sees both women fight through adversity and leaves us all screaming for 2 more rounds. Because, I mean, if it's the Namajunas that we saw last May against Esparza, nobody's going to be asking for 2 more rounds, and it'll take away from some of Fiore's moment if she does end up winning this like I think she does. But give me Fiore in what I only hope will be a fight that leaves us excited for whatever both women do next. That brings us to the main event of UFC Paris, a heavyweight matchup between former interim champ Ciryl Gane and the surging contender Sergey Spivak. Gane, the 33-year-old Frenchman, is 11-2 overall. He is 8-2 in the UFC. As I mentioned, he is a former interim champ. He won the interim title over Derek Lewis almost exactly 2 years ago in Lewis's hometown of Houston, Texas. Since then, however, he is 1-2 with decisive losses to Francis Ngannou in their title unification bout. And then most recently, a humiliating thrashing at the hands of John Jones at UFC 285 in March. He'll be looking to bounce back from that loss to Jones and certify himself a continued factor in the immediate title picture against Spivak. 28-year-old Moldovan is 16-3 overall. He is 7-3 in the UFC. He is on a 3-fight win streak since crushing loss to Tom Aspinall almost exactly 2 years ago. Since then, he has easy wins, if we're being honest, over Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai, and most recently, Lewis in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 218 in February. So Spivak comes into this with quite a bit of momentum himself, looking for his first glimpse at the top of the mountain, and Gane, of course, looking to get back there. Your favorite in this fight is -175. Your underdog is +145. Who are they, Keith?
The Gane's got to be the favorite.
You nailed it. I've asked you 3
Finally.
times. Ciryl Gane is your favorite at -175. Spivak is +145. You know what? If these guys had fought, say, 2 years ago, say, if Gane was fighting Spivak instead of Lewis, and Spivak instead of going to fight Aspinall, was going to fight Gane, this would have been a much wider line. Gane would have been like -400, and it would have been an easy fight for me to call because Spivak just didn't seem to have the athleticism or the strength or the motor to make his kind of grinding game go, and nobody had really been able to take down Gane. He was just too fast, too fluid. His footwork and his jab and his low kick just seemed to mystify and snake charm everybody. Oh, how times have changed in 2 years. Gane is still the favorite, but there's more to ask here. And something interesting has happened. I mean, I have copped several times on the show at this point to really, really badly writing off Sergey Spivak. You know, he came into the UFC about 5 years ago as a 23-year-old. And again, he came in off of wins over Tony Lopez and Travis Fulton in 2 of his last 3 fights. And I literally said on a preview, if you come to the UFC by beating Tony Lopez and Travis Fulton, you're probably not ready for prime time, even at heavyweight. And
we went full circle. We mentioned Cornolle's and Tony Lopez are the same. You know that was going to happen.
Yep. And, you know, in his UFC debut, he got plunked by Walt Harris in like 45 seconds. But since then, he has turned into a damn good fighter, and he's been steadily improving. And he's been steadily improving in ways that fighters normally don't. Like, normally, to a certain extent, your athleticism is what it is. But he has become more athletic, and it's just been by being in better shape. I mean, he was kind of a dumpy 245 or 250 when he came to the UFC, and he was 23 years old. Now he's 28, and he's a pretty chiseled 250 or 255. He seems lighter on his feet. He seems more fluid as an athlete. And as a guy who is willing to box, but mostly wants to take you down, ground and pound you, and either submit you or just, you know, beat your head into guacamole, his new body has left him more capable of doing that. I mean, hell, if you had Spivak against Lewis 2 years ago, it would have been an easy pick because Spivak was hittable on the feet. And, oh, dude, nobody just throws Derek Lewis around. And then Spivak threw Derek Lewis around like we'd never seen anybody do. Like, not even Curtis Blades. Like, Curtis Blades out-wrestled Lewis for a round, but it was dicey. You know, it took him a try or two to get him down. It was tough for him to keep him down. Spivak just belly to back suplexed him all over the place as if to make a point. Spivak, he was already better than I expected, and he's gotten better. And he's running into Gane just at the time when, in 2 of his last 3 fights, big, strong guys have folded him into origami. Like, Francis Ngannou put on a wrestling clinic against Gane. I mean, obviously, that was kind of the big standout moment of their meeting last January. It wasn't that Ngannou won; it's that Ngannou won by grounding Gane repeatedly, and then Jones. I mean, he literally folded Gane in half with his hands. Just, you know, kind of pushed him against the cage, folded him in half like he was going to cradle him or something, and then guillotined him, like shoving him down into the cage. I mean, it looked like a playground bully submission. Like, he just bullied Gane.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these guys have gone from a dreadful style matchup and what would have been an easy fight to pick 2 years ago into a fight with serious questions about it. Like, that's the things that Ngannou and Jones have done to Gane, could Spivak do? I'm leaning towards yes. Gane, the things he's good at, he's still good at. He is as light on his feet and as agile as any fighter that size in MMA history. Ngannou is big and strong. He's probably bigger and stronger than Gane, but like, there's no question who's winning in the decathlon between those two. Gane is blowing away Ngannou in the 100-meter dash, the hurdles, the long jump. Ngannou can probably dunk a basketball. Gane could probably dunk one between his legs, and he's French.
He's winning the slam dunk contest.
Yeah, if there's a UFC slam dunk competition,
Gane versus Vince Carter, the slam dunk contest.
Yeah, they bring back John Dodson to do like the full Muggsy Bogues thing, you know, nice. Have him like pump up his sneakers and so the things that Gane does, he still does well. I mean, he's not a high volume striker, but at his best, it works because he bewilders his opponents into being even lower volume strikers. And if they try to force the issue, he does punish them for it. Like, before, it was just like, wow, how are Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Alexander Volkov just standing and staring at this guy hypnotized? And then when we saw what it looked like when Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa tried to push the issue, and Gum's like, nope, I mean, I still am a 260-pound guy. I will punch you in the face. He doesn't have as much one-shot power as you would expect of a guy that looks like he does, but he has enough. He's not, I'm not to bring him up every single episode of our show, but it's not Chase Sherman where, he's this big buff 255-pound guy and, he hits like a water pistol. Yeah. Spivak, his striking has come along, but it's still a means to an end. He wants to get his hands on you. He will shoot, and I think his shots from outside have improved just as he's become a better athlete. And so able to get better penetration step and able to finish better just because he's stronger. But still, his best takedowns come off of stepping into range, getting a body lock, and taking a guy for either a short ride via a trip or a little longer ride, if he decides to hoist him. And that's definitely gotten better as he's, gotten stronger. Just, I might be dead wrong about this. And if I'm dead wrong, I'll know it right away because Spivak will be like coming at Gane is getting his legs chewed up with low kicks and Gane sliding out, the side and giving up ground. And Spivak just looks like a lumbering, literal polar bear trying to get at him. But I'm betting against that. I'm going with the underdog here. I'm thinking that Spivak can do at least some facsimile of what Ngannou and Jones did to Gane. Gane won't be able to, for 5 rounds, keep Spivak at range, just chipping away with him. That doesn't fit in with how I've seen Sergey Spivak fight in the last couple of years. Give me Spivak to win a decision here. I don't think he's just going to get this effortless submission like Jones did, but it might look a bit like the Ngannou fight, where for as long as the striking is going on, Gane's actually getting the better of it, but he just can't keep Spivak off him, and it takes him way too long to get back up when he's on the bottom, and he's getting beat up and he's getting worn out while he's down there. I could see it going to the end, but there's been a round where Gane was in an arm triangle choke at the horn and maybe got saved. So yeah, give me Spivak to get it done in kind of a lopsided decision here, and take one more step towards a title shot.
Yeah, this is an intriguing fight. Like, I agree. Ciryl Gane, he's a fantastic athlete. I mean, like you said, the guy moves so well. He understands range well. I've said this before. He sets pace with his footwork. If he wants to slow the pace down, he uses it with the way he circles and continues to create space. He keeps his opponent guessing with his switching of his stances. Very relaxed and composed striker. Good vision. Very quick, accurate. Fantastic jab. He, as I mentioned earlier, he doubles up his jab. Like his follow up straight down the pipe. I like that he can wrap punches around his opponent's guard. He's very good at that. He throws combos. He's one of these guys. He changes his stance in mid combination to get different angles, cuts angles well. Good body work. I agree what you said about his power. Like I'd put him in like a plus power guy. I mean, he starts Tai Tuivasa, but generally speaking, he's when you categorize in heavyweights with big punching power, you're not going to put him in that group.
There are a lot of worse heavyweights with better power.
Yeah, exactly. Like Greg Hardy has more power than him. Yeah. He's I don't know why I thought of Greg Hardy, but he's got a very good kicking game. Like those front kicks, body, crushes his body, good leg kicks. He steps in with knees really well. He's I don't want to say okay. He's like a C- offensive wrestler. Where like I give him a passing grade. It's not strong, but like I've seen him get some takedowns. Not much top control. If he's on top, he does hit hard. Good with the ground and pound. But defensive wrestling, I mean, he is a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, and worse is he struggles on bottom. So not just he get taken down, but he can't get back up. And we saw that he lost UFC championship because he couldn't get off the bottom in the 5th round against Francis Ngannou. You mentioned it. John Jones embarrassed him on the ground. I mean, that was silly. He also showed terrible fight IQ for a guy who seems to be so intelligent on the feet. It's like the complete opposite on the ground. I mean, when you're going into the 5th round with Francis Ngannou, and you're on top, and if you hold him down, you go to win, and you drop down for heel hook. That was really, really. Now, I know a lot of people think that Francis Ngannou was getting out, and it was more of him falling off. That could be the case. I thought he went for heel hook, but that could be the case. But Sergey Spivak, he's kind of like what I talked about Volkan Oezdemir for a guy who's a top contender. He's not a great athlete, though. I totally agree with what you said. He's improved his athleticism. That's basically from his physique. He was like this pudge ball now. Now he looks, looks like a pretty quality heavyweight. I agree that, as you said, his striking is coming along. You go back to the Carlos Felipe fight. Now again, this a little unfair to say go back to Carlos Felipe fight like that's going to affect a Cyril Gane matchup. But I remember that he's throwing a lot of jabs. He was jabbing him up. He was following with 1-2s. He will throw some kicks, but though they're not really kicks for threats, just more like point scores. Very basic kicking game. Defensively, he just covers and pillars, which I do not like to defend shots. Not a lot of movement. He's a good wrestler though. Like that's what he wants to. He's good. He strikes to distract to get to the clinch. He wants to go smacking titties. Like he's going chest to chest, working the clinch. He looks for foot sweeps. He loves throws. He'll do like a lateral drop, which I hate, especially with a big guy. Landing on top. He'll go for headlocks, willing to give up his back in the scramble. You mentioned he'll shoot for entries. Definitely like a heavyweight type one. He's not blasting through the hips like Curtis Blades. He's more of like a snatch single kind of guy. You mentioned like his last match against Derek. He ran right through Derek Lewis. So, when he ran through Derek Lewis, I was kind of like, oh man, is Spivak arrived? Is he legit? Or is Derek Lewis shot? Well, the Derek Lewis last win kind of shows that, you know what I mean? Like maybe it was, Spivak has arrived. On top, pretty busy ground and pound, and he's got 6 submission wins. So this is what I'm confident in this fight, that this fight won't be competitive.
I like that.
I'm just not sure who wins. It's such a lazy break. Like my prediction's so lazy, but there really is most likely two outcomes. Either Gane is too fast, too athletic, moves around, jabs him up. Spivak, is trying to get to him. He can't get to him. He keeps circling, moving, jabbing, and eventually he either just wins a unanimous decision or gets a late stoppage or something. But it's like was one-sided the whole time. It's kind of like the Tai Tuivasa fight. Or Spivak is able to close the distance, just grabs Gane, throws him, and eventually gets a submission. Like that's it. It's good. It's like I think that loss to John Jones is going to really burn something up and Gane, because it was embarrassing. So I think he lost to Francis Ngannou on the ground, but despite looking so bad on the ground, he still was 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe. I don't know what the time was from winning the UFC heavyweight championship against Francis Ngannou. And I can't get that in my head. Like, yeah, he was completely embarrassed by John Jones. A whole lot of fighters has been completely embarrassed by John Jones in the last 12, 13, whatever, 15 years it's been that he's been in the UFC. I think Gane gets on his bike. He's moving. He's L-stepping. He's not a stationary target. I think he jabs up Spivak for the majority of the fight. I think I'm going to say he's going to try to make a statement, and I say he does what he normally does, and gets ahead with jabs and teep kicks and calf kicks, and it looks like sparring, kind of boring. But then I think at the very end he turns it up, and I think he lands something big. I say he finishes him in the very last round. I'll say Gane wins by 5th round TKO.
All right. A little bit of disagreement to close out this card. And, depending on how our picks go, the French crowd might be absolutely ecstatic at the end of the evening or very, very quiet. But you know what? I was there when Gane beat Lewis, and I walked by the only 2 happy people in the whole building, this old couple that were holding up a French flag, and I gave them their props and I shook their hands. And so I'm okay with whatever happens on Saturday. That's it. That is the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 226, Gane versus Spivak. I've been Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time watching one of our previews, first of all, thank you. Please do like, subscribe, drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section, and we're both good about reading and responding to those. We'd love to hear your take on these fights. But above all, join us on the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 10 or 15 minutes after the main event, where Keith takes the captain's chair. We will talk about all 12 of these fights in reverse order, starting from the headliner all the way down to that crucial Zarah Fairn dos Santos fight in the opener, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something, and talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers. But we are also talking with you. The comment section, the live chat is open that whole time on our YouTube page, and we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time, putting them up on the screen as well as just reading them out and responding. We have a growing group of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
Think I'll